Morning, honorable members.
Good morning,
Let me also greet the esteemed leadership of government, the committee staff and all colleagues present. My sincere apologies that we're starting a minute late. I'm recovering, or I'm trying to recover from a horrible flu that I picked up in Limpopo. So I thought that let me try and just get myself a quick concoction before the meeting starts. So I do apologize that we're running a little bit late. Can I ask Hajira to please put up the notice of the meeting so that we may get in the agenda? And also, may I also just recognize the presence of the Minister of DCDT in the meeting. Colleagues, the agenda is before you, and maybe just to say that we are meeting in the third week of this term. You will remember that we started off in the first week or so with marathon meetings with the intention to consider the annual performance plans of the two departments as well as their entities. We have also just concluded as well what I thought was a very successful visit to the province of Limpopo, where we were on the ground and sought to, understand the challenges, improvements where there are any that are being made. So we are exactly 7 days away from the tabling of the budget vote for vote 30 and vote 4. So today's meeting, as you'll see on the agenda, has got the consideration of a number of reports, specifically the DCDT and the GCIS budget votes. We are also just trying to catch up on a lot of the work that you had done towards the end of last year in terms of reporting. So both the first and second quarter, as well as the third and fourth quarters, have been presented to the committee. I got a request from this morning from the committee advisors that the third and fourth quarter performance and financial reports were not yet ready, and they requested that we defer them, but I don't see them on the agenda anyway. So we'll consider those as soon as they're finalized. But I think there's a lot of work that has gone into the reports. With that being said, I also want to acknowledge colleagues, a number of correspondences that I've gotten from you, as well as the ministry. I think we'll remember last week, the minister had to withdraw the AI policy. So I did get correspondence from the African National Congress, the MKP, and the minister's office requesting that we table, or we schedule rather, a discussion on the matter to look at how it unfolded, and as the minister had said publicly, what consequence management measures are going to be implemented in that regard. So I just want to acknowledge that and indicate that that meeting will be scheduled as soon as our schedule permits, but the Secretariat is still looking at it. Maybe then, without wasting any more time, let me check with Hajira. Do we have any apologies for this meeting, and do we have a quorum to begin?
Good morning, Chairperson. Chairperson, we have a quorum to begin the meeting. And the apologies on our side is an apology from the Deputy Minister, who has ministerial commitments, and also Mr. Matafa. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Hajira. Please bring back the notice of the meeting. Can I, colleagues, there's the agenda with 6 items. It may look like a lot, but I do believe that we'd be able to go through them. The first 2 are really presentations from the department. One is on the annual performance reviews of ICASA councillors. Now, members will remember that last year, around this time actually, we were asked to consider the increase in the remuneration of independent office bearers by the committee in the presidency. And members at that time had raised very strongly an issue that while we understand that the salary increases are not necessarily performance-based, but it's important that when we look at this, we also have a view of the performance of those councillors. So that's why we've put this item right up on the agenda early in the quarter, so that by the time we have to come to the issue of the review of the salaries, at least we would have gone through this process and hopefully avert what happened last year. The second item, I'll also be guided by members a lot on this. You'll remember that beginning of the year, this year or last year, whichever year it was, we started looking at the international strategy of the department, and they presented a number of MoUs, at which point there was a feeling that none of these had been presented to Parliament for ratification, and it was important that we put a spotlight on this. So we want to know, are those international agreements being implemented? And if not, why not? And then so the 2 and 3 speak to the same item, and then 4 and 5 is then the committee staff taking us through the draft reports on the budget vote, as well as the first and second quarter performance reports of the DCDT. So that is our agenda in a nutshell, colleagues. As always, the presentations will not exceed 20 minutes, and the presentations of the report 15 minutes each, our internal reports. May I please have a mover for the adoption of the agenda as presented?
Chairperson, it's Imran
Yes.
Subrati. I move for the adoption of the report of the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Honorable Subrati. May I have a seconder?
Chairperson.
Honorable Ngubane?
Chair, I second the adoption of the agenda.
Thank you very much. The agenda is then adopted as presented. Mr. Minister, I think I've presented the agenda. The first item really falls squarely within your ambit. If you may lead us into the presentations, and I want to propose that we take both presentations neither exceeding 20 minutes, which starts at the time where the entities come. So if you have any opening remarks, and then you may lead us. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good morning to the honourable members from the committee and all colleagues who are online. Chair, we are joined for these two presentations by the DG and DDG Shilembe. We are here, as you correctly set out, to present the update with regards to the progress on the performance management system for the ICASA councillors, and also the presentation on the Memorandum of Understanding. You correctly indicated that I think sometime around last year and also in November when we appeared before the committee asked us to move with speed in order to finalize the development of the performance management system. Subsequent to that, there's been a series of engagement, including with the councillors, in finalizing those individual performance management systems, starting with the 5 councillors and then subsequently the 4 councillors, because those needed to align also in terms of the period under which all the councillors had been in place. So what DDG Shilembe will be able to present is a series of interventions and activities that have happened since then, up to now, wherein the team is now at the final stages of making sure that they can present that system to the Ministry for authorization, and then we will be able to bring it back to Parliament, as is the final step that's required. I also want to just express an apology with regards to the belated submission of the presentation with regards to the MoUs. It was way outside of the timeline that is required for that to be presented to the Portfolio Committee, but I wanted to ask for the committee's apology for the inconvenience that late submission caused. But the presentation will also outline a series of the MoUs that are in place, And most importantly, which I think will also inform the committee's approach to these MoUs, was how do we then plan to showcase that these just go beyond signing of the memorandum of understandings, and we institutionalize those into clear, tangible programs that can have an impact on delivery. So the DG and DDG Shelembe will equally speak to efforts to that regard. Without wasting much time, Chair, I'll hand over to the DG and the DDG through you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister, and a very good morning to you, Honourable Chair, honourable members. Good morning to the Minister and the colleagues on the platform. The two presentations which we are going to be presenting this morning, the one relates in terms of the work that the department does, I think, in consultation with Parliament, and this is basically the review of the performance of the ICASA councillors. So as you would know, honourable members, obviously this is a Chapter 9 institution, of which then the department's role was to basically set up a performance monitoring system. I would like to invite the DDG to take us through the presentation. And then similarly, what we are also presenting is the implementation plan for the MoUs, which are concluded. Obviously, these are concluded in line with our constitutional provisions. Honourable members, the biggest issue has been, I think, Chair, you raised this issue. For us, we cannot proceed with the implementation of the MoUs until such time that they have been tabled and ratified in Parliament. And that's been the essence of why we have been urgently seeking the ratification. However, what we are presenting is then the draft implementation plan, but also illustrating how previously we have gone about in as far as the implementation plan, the monitoring and evaluation of our MoUs with our counterparts, as well as implementing these with the relevant stakeholders nationally. These would either be your state-owned entities, this would be the private sector, and also the SMMEs and sister departments. With that, I'd like to hand over to the DDG, please, to take us through then the first presentation.
Very good morning to the chairperson and the honourable members of the Portfolio Committee, to the Minister and the colleagues on the platform. Chairperson, as it has been introduced, I am going to really be presenting an update to the committee on the implementation of the ICASA performance and management system. Next slide, please. So first of all, I thought we will just recap, the legal position of where the ICASA performance and management system emanates from. And that is essentially from Section 6, capital letter A of ICASA Act of 2000 as amended, which regulates the performance management of ICASA councillors, and it provides subsection 1, it says the minister must, in consultation with the National Assembly, establish a performance management system to monitor and evaluate the performance of the chairperson and other councillors. Subsection 2 says the performance management system must A, set an appropriate key performance indicators as a yardstick for measuring performance, B, set measurable performance targets, and C, set a procedure to measure and review performance at least once a year. Subsection 3 says, as soon as it is practicable, after the appointment of the chairperson and other councillor, a performance agreement must be concluded between the chairperson and other councillor and the minister. The evaluation in subsection 4 says the evaluation of the performance of the chairperson or other councillor must be conducted by a panel constituted by the minister in consultation with the National Assembly for that purpose. And finally, in subsection 5, it says that evaluation panel contemplated in the above subsection must, after an evaluation of the chairperson or other councillor, submit a report to the National Assembly for consideration. Next slide, please. So in terms of the background, then we came to the Portfolio Committee in October 2025 and presented an update on the implementation of the ICASA performance management system. That update essentially centered around on the progress we had made with the completion of the performance agreements by councillors, proposals to appoint the evaluation panel. At the time, we were proposing to appoint 3 members of the evaluation panel as provided for in the current PMS framework, and the need to review the PMS framework because we had hit the 3-year review period. At the time, as the department, we were recommending that the committee approves, though, that we appoint the 3 originally proposed members of the evaluation panel. However, the committee directed that the department should fast-track the review of the PMS, particularly to allow for the appointment of additional members of the panel on top of the 3, to include the technical expertise in the evaluation panel. Next slide, please. So where are we now then with respect to performance agreements? In line with the requirement then to have councillors and the chairperson of ICASA sign performance agreements with the minister. The ICASA councillors developed individual performance agreements for the 2025-26 financial year, covering the period 1 April 2025 to 31 March 2026. During February and March 2025, and in consultation with the ICASA, we undertook as the department a detailed review of the ICASA councillors' performance agreements to assess their alignment to ICASA strategic priorities, regulatory mandate, and governance requirements, as well as clarity of performance indicators and measurability of targets. Following that review and feedback provided, the ICASA Council submitted the draft performance agreements of the chairperson and 3 councillors, that being the entire council at the time, in April 2025 for consideration by the minister. But subsequent to that and following the appointment of the additional 4 councillors in May 2025, further feedback engagements were held with the ICASA Council, incorporating the draft performance agreements of the new councillors. This was essentially to ensure that work is distributed equitably amongst all the councillors and they cover the full scope of the mandate of ICASA. On top of that, we had one-on-one meetings with the individual councillors on 11 November 2025 to discuss their respective performance agreements in detail and provide further guidance on strengthening performance indicators and targets. On 14 November 2025, we also had a meeting with the entire council to discuss the performance agreements. Next slide, please. After that, then a summary of the outcomes of these engagements was also provided to the councillors to assist them in revising their performance agreements. Following those engagements and the department's feedback, the councillors submitted their revised performance agreements. 5 councillors submitted in December 2025, while 4 submitted in February 2026 after revisions of their December submissions. The department submitted them along with its recommendations for improvements to the minister for review and approval in March 2026. And the recommendations are to be implemented during the development of the 2026-27 performance agreements. In other words, We are acknowledging that these performance agreements are not perfect or are not 100% perfect, but we are going to be improving on them as we go along, rather than spending the entire time harping on the performance agreements for one financial year. So the recommendations that we have made will be included in the development of the 2026-27 performance agreements. Next slide, please. The revised performance agreement system has also been undertaken by the department. In terms of clause 15 of the PMS, provides that the system is valid for a period of 3 years, after which it must be reviewed. In line with this requirement, we have initiated a review of the PMS as from November 2025. The review was further informed by the engagements we had with the committee and the recommendations that people or additional people be considered for appointment into the ICASA evaluation panel. Because this was not included in the original or the current framework, then it necessitated that the framework be reviewed anyway. Engagements with ICASA councillors during the review of their performance agreements also informed the need to review the PMS. The engagement with the councillors revealed some concerns regarding the current PMS. One, it was that it does not adequately recognize good performance. It also does not provide a mechanism for councillors to query or dispute evaluation outcomes prior to submission of the report to Parliament, and that it does not clearly define the evaluation methodology, resulting in uncertainty regarding how performance will be addressed. These concerns highlighted gaps relating to fairness, transparency, and accountability, necessitating a rather comprehensive review of the PMS. Next slide, please. So these are the key changes we have introduced in the PMS. One, we have introduced a KPI framework to guide performance agreements, as I have already referred onto the legal position, which says there shall be KPIs that should inform the performance agreement. So the rationale here really is to standardize performance indicators, improve measurability, and ensure alignment with the ICASA's statutory mandate and strategic objectives. The other change that we have introduced is that of increasing the panel size from 3 to 5 members to include technical expertise. This was recommended by the committee, but is essentially to enhance technical capability, improve credibility of evaluations, and respond to the portfolio committee's recommendation. The other change relates to the incorporation of a structured performance appraisal process, including performance ratings and clearer assessment criteria. This we have done because the current PMS, which was approved in 2022, did not provide for a formalized appraisal system. The revised PMS links performance appraisal to performance agreements, the strategic plan, and the annual performance plan, ensuring measurable and objective assessments. It enables formal performance ratings, improving consistency, accountability, and recognition of performance, good performance for that matter. The inclusion of the KPI framework strengthens alignment with the statutory functions and enhances measurability. Next slide, please. The other change that we have included in the PMS is the provision for performance outcomes to inform remuneration considerations through the Independent Commission for the Remuneration of Public Office Bearers and Chapter 9 institutions. The rationale here is that the current PMS did not clearly link performance outcomes to remuneration processes. The revised PMS now clarifies that while remuneration is determined by the independent commission, performance outcomes will be formally submitted to support its determinations. This is so because in terms of the law governing the determination of remuneration, the relevant minister must be considered by the commission before it makes its recommendations. So when that consultation takes place, the minister will be able to then submit the formal performance assessment of the councillors. Also, the other rationale is that this change strengthens accountability and ensures alignment between performance and remuneration considerations. It also maintains compliance and constitutional arrangements governing remuneration for Chapter 9 institutions, and it responds to concerns regarding the lack of recognition of good performance. We are also proposing a new panel on top of the one required by the law. That is the establishment of a dispute advisory panel to help with the resolving disputes prior to escalation to the National Assembly. Again, here, the rationale is that the 2022 PMS did not provide a structured dispute resolution mechanism prior to parliamentary submission. It also now the dispute advisory panel introduces a time-bound structured process to review the disputes and ensure fairness. It reduces the burden on the National Assembly whilst preserving its oversight role. Next slide, please. With respect to the consultation process then on the PMS, we have submitted the draft revised PMS to the Deputy Minister on 29 April 2026 for review and onward submission to the Minister, following which the revised PMS will be referred to ICASA Council for consultation and inputs. Following receipt of ICASA inputs, the department will consider and incorporate those inputs where appropriate, finalize the revised PMS, and submit the final PMS to the Minister for approval. Upon approval by the Minister, the revised PMS will then be submitted to the National Assembly for consultation in line with Section 6, capital A of the ICASA Act number of 2000. Next slide, please. Here we are presenting the motivation for the revised PMS. We're saying the proposed amendments are necessary to ensure that the PMS remains relevant, effective, and aligned with legislative requirements. Also, the revisions respond directly to the 3-year review requirement, recommendations from the Portfolio Committee on particularly expanding the panel, and concerns raised by ICASA councillors regarding the fairness, transparency, and clarity of the PMS. The introduction of a KPI framework, enhanced evaluation processes, and a dispute advisory panel to address key gaps by 1, enabling a proper recognition of differentiation of performance, providing a fair and structured mechanism for dispute resolution, and ensuring clarity and transparency in the evaluation methodology. The expansion of the evaluation panel strengthens the credibility, technical robustness, and independence of the performance evaluation process. The proposed consultation process ensures that the PMS is practical, inclusive, and aligned with the governance and oversight requirements. Next slide, please. On performance evaluation itself, then we are saying once the revised PMS is approved by the National Assembly, together with the appointment of the evaluation panel and the dispute advisory panel, the evaluation of performance will commence. Performance evaluation will be done after the publication and submission of the ICASA annual report because it is against which that performance is being assessed. The department is in the process of identifying candidates for the panels to recommend to the Minister for consideration. The process has been complicated and prolonged by potential conflict of interest of the identified candidates with technical expertise as they operate within the ICT sector. The committee will recall that that was the reason we had given at the time for not including the technical experts in the evaluation panel, the fear that they might have conflict of interest. But we are continuing to try and find the relevant expertise without or who are not conflicted in any way. Upon conclusion of the process, the Minister will identify the suitable candidates and present the full composition of the panels to the National Assembly for approval. Next slide, please. So that was the final slide on the ICASA PMS implementation update. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DGG. Can we immediately move to the second presentation? And thank you for sticking to the time allocated. I hope the second presentation will follow that great example. Who is leading DG on the second presentation?
He is chair, so he's continuing on the great example that you have articulated.
Thank you, the omega and alpha of all presentations. Can you proceed, Mr. Shelembe?
Thank you, Chair. For this presentation, I'm going to invite my colleague who is responsible for particularly the MoUs in the department to make the presentation. However, I will be available for engaging with the committee afterwards. The colleague is Mr. Zwelibans Masilela. I understand he's on the platform to take us through, Chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Masilela. You may proceed. I'm not sure if it's just me, but I can't hear Mr. Masilela. Mr. Masilela, are you on the platform? Colleagues, can anybody else hear Mr. Masilela?
We
No,
can't hear
Chair.
Chairperson.
I also can't hear him. I don't seem to see him on the platform as well. So I will take the committee
He's
through.
back, DDG. I think
Oh,
he's ready to hear us now.
Okay, thank you.
Proceed, DDG Shelembe. Mr. Masilela will take over when he's able to. You can proceed.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this presentation is really to provide an explanation on the approach that we will follow in the implementation of the agreements which we presented to the committee in March 2026. The notified bilateral agreements were the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Singapore, and the Ivory Coast. Next slide, please. The implementation of the agreements is essentially negotiated between the contracting parties, and it follows the agreed or prescribed method of implementation as reflected in each agreement. Particularly, or for an example, Article 5 of the Ivory Coast agreement establishes an ICT committee to facilitate the implementation of the agreement. Similarly, paragraph 4 of the Singapore agreement states how the agreement should be implemented. And also Article 4 of the Saudi Arabia agreement states how the agreement should be implemented. Next slide, please. So on the basis of the areas of cooperation and scope of the agreement as decided in each agreement by the parties, each country identifies the areas from the agreed list to prioritize in the implementation via a mutually agreed implementation plan. We have attached the examples to this presentation of the implementation plan agreement. These are guided by the following. For instance, for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Article 3 identifies the 8 areas of cooperation over 3 years. And for Singapore, Article 3 also identifies the 4 areas of cooperation over 3 years. The agreement also allows additional areas of areas as agreed between the parties. And for Ivory Coast, Article 3 and Article 4 establish the scope of cooperation and the 13 areas of cooperation respectively over a period of 5 years. And next slide, please. So what are the additional considerations that guide the prioritization of areas to be implemented? These are the DCDT strategic plan priorities over the medium term, the 2025 to 2030 strategic plan. Our DCDT international engagement strategy is approved for 2025 to 2030. The foreign policy objectives as guided by appropriate institutions, particularly DERCO, the presidency, and cross-cutting international interdepartmental interest. The National Development Plans, Chapter 7, on positioning South Africa in the world, specifically on international trade, regional integration, and foreign policy. The other consideration, of course, is the required resources, human resources and financial resources as determined by the negotiated implementation plans. Next slide. So the prioritization of the Singapore implementation, we have identified by 15 April 2026 the following areas as priority in the implementation. For Singapore, digital skills, AI, cybersecurity, including the following agreed for immediate implementation. So on digital skills development and capacity building, which is on our side, NEMISA-led, is NEMISA and NUSISS commenced discussions on 30 April 2026 on the full implementation of digital skills and capacity building, including curriculum development. These include design training program, explore actual training program content, thinking about the funding model, and developing a profile or a marketing for the program. Postal issues, which will be led by SAPO on our side. We link Singapore Post with SAPO to explore areas of cooperation, including establishing a virtual post with SAPO for e-commerce facilitation, with the focus on how to provide end-to-end logistics solutions and cooperation on international relations, such as the Universal Postal Union agenda. All in all, with the SAPO for the future, or all in line with the SAPO for the future strategy. SOEs, efficiencies, and artificial intelligence with cybersecurity policy cooperation. That will be CETA and DCDT led. Here it includes the exploration of benchmarking between CETA and GovTech Singapore as part of the repurposing of CETA, specifically looking at cooperation on digital government, creating seamless citizen-centric services, and driving smart nation goals through tech innovation. In addition to that, we hope to facilitate an institutional digital readiness exercise to determine ability for CETA to lead government digital transformation roadmap. Next slide, please. Next slide, please, Zaytun. With respect to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, prioritization of implementation, I see Chair Mr. Masilela has joined. He will indicate if he's ready to take over. And the department has identified as early as 26 November 2024, the following areas as priority in the implementation of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia Agreement. The priority areas include enhancing cooperation in the field of digital infrastructure development, including facilitating technical discussions on the deployment strategies of digital infrastructure, particularly on our side being led by BBI and Centec, the exchange of best practice on policy interventions in support of the strategies, which will be led by the department. And based on the above, investigate potential investors and potential partnerships for the investment in digital infrastructure rollout, which will be informed by business cases developed by BBI, Centec, which will also involve the National Treasurer. The first engagement between the department, BBI, Centec, and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia counterparts on the above took place in 2024. The draft activation plan and way forward is attached for reference purposes. Mr. Masilela, I see right up here on the screen. You may proceed, starting from the Ivory Coast, please. With your permission, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair. I hope I am audible now.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you very much. Chair, I am using Ms. Lishaba's device as the name reflects. Unfortunately, mine the mic wouldn't work. Sincere apologies. The current Ivory Coast agreement, parallel to the negotiation of all the agreements, we were also working on implementation plans. So the process of identifying the areas of interest on Ivory Coast were based on the old negotiated agreement, which we will then review and renegotiate. The implementation, as I said, was via the binational commissions process and need to be retabled within the binational commission process that is convened by DECO. Next slide, please. Now, implementation, Chair, is defined as those that implement rather are defined as implementation agents in the various agreements. Now, in the ones that we are reflecting on, if you look at paragraphs 2 of Ivory Coast, Article 2 of the Saudi Arabia in Chapter 2 of Singapore, each identify who the implementation agents are. And those are the lead institutions that coordinate and facilitate the implementation of the agreements. In all three, the DCDT is identified legally as the implementation agents. However, it also provides that the implementation agents themselves need to identify parties that they may prefer to use for specific areas that need implementation of the agreement. For example, in the digital infrastructure aspect, which is evident in the Singapore agreement, Centec and BBI are leading. In areas of regulation, ICASA, FPB for child online protection takes the lead. On issues of e-government and digital transformation, CETA leads with DCDT taking leadership on policy, digital skills, NEMISA, broadcasting, SABC. And then as the DG reflected in the introduction, in most, a substantive part of the implementation also is led by private sector, South African private sector, and small enterprises. As indicated in the beginning, all negotiated and agreed implementation plans are time-bound and also define the resources and accountability process that need to be followed for its monitoring and evaluation and implementation. Next slide, please. The following mechanisms are utilized to monitor the implementation. I think it's important to reflect on this as it tries or seeks to alleviate the concerns on implementation of MoUs. There are three, if I may, three processes that we normally follow. There is an internal process where the directorates responsible for bilateral relations acts as liaison between the parties to facilitate and coordinate the implementation, monitor the programs that are being implemented by the department and also by the other stakeholders that we have listed in the previous slides. And these are reported either in the annual plans, but normally or the substance of it is reflected in business plans of the department based on the agreed implementation plans. The second one are external in nature in terms of the monitoring and evaluation. And these involved the Department of Cooperation and International Relations, where departments are expected or obligated to report on implementation of all bilateral agreements through various platforms, but the main ones are the binational commissions or joint commissions, which are led in most cases by led at executive level, DG, even at political level by ministers. And then there are technical senior official levels reporting within the binational or BNC or joint commission framework. These are defined in terms of periods for reporting. Normally it is once a year, where each department is expected to submit reports. There is a new process, new in that it started about 2 or 3 years ago, where there is an additional external reporting through annual reporting to the presidency on implementation of all current sectoral bilateral relations, their implementations and impact as well. Next slide, please. There are two key points, Chair, that as we conclude that I wanted or we thought we should reflect. And these are the principles that guide the pursuit of bilateral relations and their ultimate benefit to the country. These are important because they frame the scope of the bilaterals, and they also determine the cooperation that we conclude. These may be implicit if you look at the texts themselves, and in some cases they can be explicit. The two key principles is that we enter into bilateral relations for our national digital technology or ICT or telecoms interests that we have. And these interests may range from market access, that is our products, our ICT products, finding market in other parties other markets that we conclude bilaterals with, or we do them for investments and partnership attraction, especially in this case for digital infrastructure investments. We do them for technology exchange, capacity building, and sharing of best practices. And then there's the second aspect, which is not economic in nature. but it is equally important, and in some cases even more important given the geopolitics now, and that is to support our multilateral agenda or for leverage. So we enter into some bilateral agreements, not for commercial or economic purposes, but to develop a common or build a common agenda and a mass interest for countries that we share the same developmental interests and agendas for purposes of influencing mutually the rules-based system and multilateral bodies, so that those rules, those guidelines, those treaties that we eventually conclude or sign up to serve the interests of the global south or countries of similar interest. Next slide, please. Therefore, Chair, as a conclusion, given the stated principles that are the two stated principles, the bilateral agreements that we have entered into with the countries that, the three countries that we have spoken to, you will realize that all three countries are at different levels of digital technologies development. Some are considered to be in the north. Others are countries of the global south, such as the Ivory Coast. And so this requires that the approach in which we implement the agreements that we have signed, taking to cognizance of these different levels of development, the type of implementation plans that we implement for each of the agreement should also take into account the two principles that we've reflected. And this, Chair, as I conclude, is that if you look at section 231 of the Constitution, it does try to distinguish this fact of the two principles in terms of how you approach the implementation of the agreements. For example, those that need ratification and those that are are technical in nature and self-implementing, such as the one that we've seen with Singapore. Next slide, please. Oh, I am done. Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Masilela and DDG Shelembe. In the remaining 5 minutes before we go into discussions, can I check with ICASA if they had anything that they would like to add on the presentation relating to the performance management system and the evaluation mechanism? Is the chair of ICASA present in the meeting?
Good morning, Honorable Chair and members, Minister, good morning, and to the DG and our colleagues. Chair, I can confirm, and thank you very much to the DCDT, I can confirm that the sequence of events as shared by the DCDT confirms our discussions in the past year. I must state, I think, Honorable Chair and members, that this has not been a very easy task because we have never done this before. So let me congratulate the team as well, because even now, all the issues that the councillors have raised, I'm happy that they've been factored in, especially the issue of disputes resolution. And maybe what I can just reflect, just in short, is the issue of some of the programs that are dependent on third parties. You may have noticed that in our APP, in order for NA to measure impact on our deliverables, it's going to be important to know that of those projects that are multi-year by nature, how do we then come back and confirm that there's been good delivery and there's been impact felt by the citizens? But because this is a moving target, I'm sure that as part of our learnings, we will then make sure that where we need to improve some of the areas, we'll take advantage of that. But for now, I can confirm on behalf of Council that what has been presented is a true reflection of our discussion and our contribution to the DCDT. But thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor. Colleagues, before I open up for members to engage, I think it's important that I make a point. I take serious exception to what was said by the department before the presentation of those reports. In particular, the insinuation that the implementation of the international agreements is the delay in the implementation is as a result of Parliament. Now, I want to put it on record that since we have come here, we have been the people who are chasing the department as it relates to the implementation of these agreements. And that's why that issue consistently comes up in our agenda, because we do not have a single communication from the department saying that there are matters sitting in Parliament. This is something I raised in the first meeting on the 12th of February 2025, if I'm not mistaken. It was our first meeting of the new year, where we asked for engagement on international agreements. So I think it's very disingenuous that an impression is created, as was said by the DG, that these are delayed because Parliament has not ratified. Leave alone the fact that some of your agreements are self-ratifying. They don't need Parliament. And even now, you still have not made a request for any ratification of any kind. So I want to put that on the record. The second issue that I want to raise in a similar vein is that this issue of the performance management system, as well as the evaluation panel, again has been raised, and the department has been chased by this portfolio committee. I think that it is extremely unfortunate that in the presentation you only reflect from October 2025. And I actually want to put for the record our discussions with you. In fact, they extend not only to this Parliament, but the 6th Parliament, because the 6th Parliament started engaging with you on the 6th of June 2023, when they first adopted issues relating to the remuneration of ICASA councillors. There, the issue of performance management was raised. The Hansard records are there for you to look. On the 27th of October, when the 7th Parliament came into office, we again had to consider the remuneration issue, and we raised performance management. On the 12th of February 2025, you came and you presented on the evaluation panel, and that's when we first made the call for technical skills in the evaluation panel. The date that you are reflecting today, the 28th of October 2025, you came back, you still had not implemented our recommendation for technical skills. You gave more explanations, more excuses why it's not been done. Now, in today's meeting, you're coming to us and presenting these changes to the PMS as if, we had requested that matter. The PMS was adopted in 2022, 2023 by the 6th Parliament. We never changed it. The only thing that we asked for was look at technical skills in the evaluation panel. I don't know if at this point you have even gone so far as to advertise for a new panel that we had asked for, that you include the technical skills in 12 February 2025. So I just want to put that on the record, colleagues. And when you look at your dates, including when you start engaging with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, when you start engaging with whoever, you can see that these dates closely align with when we call you to report here. And I think maybe we must reconsider how we work in that regard, because it's extremely problematic for us. But with that being said, I'm going to take comments from the members on these issues. I see Honorable Nchabeleng has got his hand up. He did indicate that he's traveling, so I hope that his network is stable. After Honorable Nchabeleng, we will then take Honorable Subrathi, followed by Honorable Bodlan. In that order, Honorable Nchabeleng, you may proceed. I've noted you, Honorable Singh. I'll come back to the name. Colleagues, we have a total of 1 hour for engagements on both reports, including responses. Honorable Nchabeleng.
Chair, good morning, and honorable members, and good morning all esteemed executives in the department and the entities. Chair, I think maybe the first question is to ask, I think I'm getting a deja vu of some sort. I had this presentation before in respect to MoUs as well as the challenges of these MoUs. And I don't see changes in respect to what is being reported. Instead, we're being given a same story that keeps on almost regurgitating. So my question is to ask, who at the end of the day is responsible for the implementation of this MOUs in particular. One, given the fact that, we have these MOUs that are supposed to support the DCDT strategic plan from 2025 to 2030 in terms of South Africa's digital transformation targets, and yet we don't see any of it. We just came out of a oversight last week. In that oversight, if any of these MOUs that are actually speculated here would have been implemented, Limpopo would not be this disaster province in respect to digital transformation targets. So I tend to really get worried when officials go overseas, do all these amazing trips, but when they come back, these MOUs are just paper that is drafted by departments of DERCO, particularly in respect to partnership with DCDT, but nothing comes to fruition. What are the measurable outcomes in terms of jobs expected from this bilateral agreement? Secondly, how does the department ensure that these agreements are not just, duplicating existing initiatives or partnerships? For instance, I think the early presenter before the last presenter indicated that they signed MOUs with regards to the post office in Singapore and what example they wanted to use. You and I, as members of the committee, we walked through the post offices, several of them, in Limpopo last week. One in the Vemba area, the other one in, I think it was not the Capricorn area. And it was a major disaster. Those post offices don't even look like anything where human beings should be working at and facilitating trade. So where and what are these bilaterals doing for us in respect to implementation of strategic programs that are led by government? Selection and prioritization. Here, I just wanted to understand, what criteria were used to prioritize specific areas. We have AI, cybersecurity, we have infrastructure. The question of Saudi Arabia, Singapore, and Ivory Coast selected as priority partnerships at this time. Has there been any progress in relating with those particular partners? I think we complicate MOUs. We have to wait for DERCO. DERCO must wait for this process. Once an MOU is signed, it's upon the government to ensure that they bring all the related parties together, the departments, in order to fast track the implementation of those MOUs, because no MOU can be signed in the last 5 years and still wait to actually implement it the next 5 years afterwards, which means it will be implemented in another administration. So I'm trying to understand all of these bilateral MOUs. What impact do they have when they are not implemented? And then the department has to tell us openly. On the side of ICASA, ICASA is found wanting in many ways, because knowing what ICASA engages with at a global level, they don't even need bilateral implementation because they already work with international bodies, ITU and others, that are guiding them on an annual basis on what should be done. So which agreements are already in implementation phase and versus the agreements that are still in planning and renegotiations? And I think if nothing is already in implementation, we have to stop wasting our time on something that is not going to work. So the department has to come out closer and give us an indication. Given that the DCT is in across, for instance, CETA, South African Post, the BBI, and ICASA. Given what I just gave and contrast to the current, we are very concerned, and we have already actually opined our views. Chair, you were there when we specifically said that we have to recall Limpopo government and actually put it under an inquiry in respect to digital transformation because of the failures that we are seeing. So if we've got all of these tools, Chair, that are unimplementable, yet according to plan, these things should have already been achieved, what are executives doing in departments? What is their job as DDGs, as DGs, as managers, as program project managers, as directors, as everything? And the minister's oversight role on all of this personnel in respect to driving his department's strategic objectives. What is happening? It looks like somebody is not cracking the whip. And the after effect of it, Chair, is that our people are suffering. This has a direct impact because opportunities that should have been created, jobs, upskilling, partnerships, improving of our infrastructure, SOEs improvement, are not achieved as targets because executives
Honorable Ntshabeleng, your line is very bad.
But I agree with you, Chair, and expect to agency to say this must be uplifted. And at that point of view, Chair, my apologies, I think the internet is unstable on my side. But from that point of view, Chair, I think we have to crack the whip at this time. That the Parliament has a responsibility to really take department into oversight and make sure that they implement on their role. At the end of the day, these things benefit our people. So I'm just going to summarize my questions to this so that I don't complicate the process for now. But I just want to understand, what are you guys doing as executives? And my apologies for using the word guys, but what are our executives doing? And Minister can give us, sort of input as to how is this going to happen when we already have one collapsed province. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ntshabeleng. Honorable Subrathi.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning.
Chairperson, good morning, Chairperson. Can you confirm that I'm audible to you, please?
We can hear you, Honorable Subrathi.
No, thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, let me then begin by indicating and complimenting Honorable Ntshabeleng had mentioned that during our oversight, there were some post offices were in a bad state, but I think it would be remiss of us if we don't, on that notion, recognize the Sibasa post office. And particularly, I want to recognize Mrs. Toyoyo and the wonderful team there that are really going the extra mile to make sure that the post office serves its community to this extent that they actually go out to the taxi ranks and they bring in clients to make sure that the post office is vibrant. And I think certainly our visit there was very refreshing. So that gives us hope, Chairperson. Chairperson, I think you have covered me in areas where I would have wanted to have raised sufficiently. You've covered the committee rather in terms of our concerns raised, and where I think the presentation was really unfair on us in attributing delays to the committee. Maybe to begin with, on one of the points that you had raised, Chairperson, the presentation has disclosed identifying candidates for the evaluation panel, and the disputed advisory panel has been complicated by conflicts of interest amongst ICT sector experts. Now, given, Chairperson, that the same conflict, this conflict of interest concern was raised in October 2025 update, and I think that it didn't talk sufficiently to this part of my question. What steps has the department taken in this intervening 6 months to broaden the candidate pool beyond the ICT sector? Because we haven't heard a plan of action, what has been done to deal with that, because that is where the problem was. And maybe can we then have a definitive timeline for presenting the panel nominations to National Assembly? My second question around the PMS, Chair, is that the revised PMS has introduced the Dispute Advisory Panel, the DAP, as a pre-parliamentary dispute resolution mechanism. However, Chairperson, Section 6A, subsection 5 of the ICASA Act requires that the evaluation panel submits its report directly to National Assembly for consideration. Now, how does the department ensure that the DAP does not delay or circumvent National Assembly's constitutionally mandated oversight role? And maybe also, has the state law advisor confirmed that the DAP is legally consistent with Section 6A. And my third question, Chairperson, would then be around the key changes. They introduce a provision linking performance outcomes to remuneration considerations through the Independent Commission for the Remuneration of Public Office Bearers. Now, given that, Chairperson, ICASA is a Chapter 9 institution and that councillors' independence from the executive is constitutionally protected, what safeguards have been built into the revised PMS to prevent the performance evaluation process, which is ministerially driven, from being used, Chairperson, as a lever to influence the regulatory conduct of councillors? Chairperson, moving on to the various MoUs, maybe the one on Ivory Coast, the presentation indicates that the Ivory Coast implementation plan negotiated has effectively lapsed. The question then is, what steps and timelines has the department set for reinitiating these negotiations, and who will lead this engagement with the Ivorian side? The second question in the section of MoUs is, for the Singapore agreement, NEMISA and NUSIS are only commenced curriculum discussions, Chairperson, on the 30th of April. And that is 5 days prior to this meeting. Now, given that the 3-year cooperation window under Article 3, what deliverables has the department set for the next 6 months? And how will Parliament be kept informed of the progress? Chairperson, the department lists ICT Bilateral Relations Directorate as the internal monitoring mechanism. Now, what is the current capacity in terms of personnel and budget? And is this sufficient to coordinate implementation across the 3 concurrent bilateral agreements involving multiple of SOEs? And maybe, Chairperson, my last question around MoUs is Section 231 of the Constitution is cited as determining the approach to implementation, specifically whether ratification is required. Now, can the department clarify for each of these 3 agreements whether they are self-implementing or they require ratification, and confirm that no implementation activity has commenced before applicable constitutional requirements are met? Thank you so much, Chairperson. Those will be my submissions.
Thank you, Honourable Subrathi, for the questions. Members, please may I request that you manage your time. We've got an hour, like I said, including responses. Honourable Botlani, please do come in.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning to the Minister, and good morning to the meeting. And I promise I will make you proud by being brief. Chair, I think the ICASA PMS report is an ongoing process that we really should not keep our eyes off as Parliament. The fact that we are where we are really is a step in the right direction. And I think, and I hope that we will also add this to our monitoring tool so that we really keep our pulse on this. What has brought us here today for me is what was a glaring gap between the work that ICASA does and perhaps maybe other entities and where we interface as Parliament. But what this also reminds me and makes, I would like to also make a point to say, I think there really is a serious gap in terms of the oversight that the DCDT has over all the entities. I know today we are limiting ourselves to ICASA, but I think the model that the structures that DCDT has really leaves a lot to be desired in terms of oversighting the entities. And I know Mr. Shelembe is the face of that, but sometimes one gets a sense that you're not even sure who is really responsible for what entity, even when we ask questions as the portfolio committee. So if the department is able to speak to that and to say, how are they strengthening that, or to disprove what I'm saying, I would really appreciate it. But I think we really need to do more in terms of the oversight of the entities. Chair, for me, every international treaty must really be something that we can translate to the man on the street. And I'm not sure if we look at a treaty like what we are talking about with Singapore and relating to the South African Post Office, if the man of the street can really say there is a real benefit. And if I could just be clarified, is it correct that this is now new as of 15 April 2026? Because if it is not new, maybe they must really tell us the direct benefits of these treaties, again, to the man on the street, so that we are able to go back to our constituents and really explain these things in simple terms. I'm not sure if this was not part of the conversation, Chair, but I would have been interested to hear in terms of the SADC and perhaps the African Union, if there are any, just even if it's on a sentence or two, and how we are handling those. Is there an intention? Are there any? Is there an intention to also bring us on board so that we also understand how we interface with the global south, as it were? Chair? And for me, Chairperson, I think what we are seeing here is again another gap in terms of what, perhaps because I have not clarified my thought, let me leave it. I will clarify my thought and maybe come back later, Chairperson. Let me stop there for now.
Thank you very much, Honorable Botlani. Honorable Singh.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you. Good morning to the Minister, members, and to all tuned into this meeting. Chair, I think I've been covered by Honorable Botlani on the ICASA matter. Regarding the MoUs, a lot that has been said, some of which I agree on. Chair, like you said, these MoUs were all signed, I think, in the previous administration. So from that aspect, taking that into account, I'm going to actually welcome this item now finally coming before the portfolio, at least showing some kind of accountability to us. Chair, my concern with the MoUs are, it may be a difficult question, but the administration is still there because these were done in the previous administration. We signed these MoUs, and when we sign them, are they actually able to be implemented in terms of being fully resourced? So, because if they cannot be fully resourced, I don't know how we're going to talk about implementation. And then the second thing is that in the presentation itself, there was quite an extensive amount of monitoring on this that supposedly happens. And as the portfolio committee, where the actual effect and the impact on citizens or on our entities and services that we offer fall under the mandate of this department, please can we as a committee request that all previous monitoring reports be actually submitted to the committee so we can also have a look at that. I'd also like to see timelines, and so that we can also monitor the progress and the successes, if any, for South Africa and its citizens. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Singh. Honorable Chauke Donis.
Chairperson, kindly confirm that I am audible.
Yes, you are, Madam.
And Chairperson, through you, may I request to keep my video off?
Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and greetings to all honorable members, and really appreciating the presentations that have been made. Chairperson, to a certain extent, I have been covered by honorable members as well, and I would have said I've been largely covered by Honorable Botlani. But as she always says, then it would be politically career limiting if I just stop there. But nonetheless, Chairperson, in terms of the MoUs that we're speaking about and the international and global treaties that we participate in and we are meant to ratify in South Africa, One wants to understand in terms of what is the formula or matrix that is utilized to monitor and evaluate the ratification of those treaties, number one. Number two is that how do we then set timelines on meeting our global and international obligations? What is being utilized to ensure that we do not require extensions and we do not meet deadlines as part of our global and international commitment as member states? The second one, Chairperson, would be in terms of the treaties that we participate in or we are involved in and are ratifying as well, and also in terms of where we are member states, we've got membership in globally or on the international platform. Perhaps if we can be highlighted, and I think Honorable Budani also spoke to this in terms of the continent as well, from a continental point of view and a global point of view, where is it that South Africa is contributing? How are we contributing? And equally to that, what is the financial contribution that we're making on an annual basis for our membership status? And in addition, it would be that, Chairperson, we would want to know that what results are yielding from these international bilateral trade agreements that we have entered into, the MoUs that are being revitalized and renewed, and also in terms of us being a member state having membership on these platforms. Additionally, I'd like to find out on the MoUs. Now, it is said that there has been a revision, some amendments, and new MoUs that are being introduced. Perhaps if we can be highlighted on what are the processes that were undertaken on the renewal, the amendments, and also on the inserting new MoUs as part of our ongoing efforts for bilateral trade. Additionally, on that, Chair, one would want to know where there has been amendments made to existing MoUs. What are the amendments that have been made? And what is the rationale behind making those particular amendments? Because we do understand that there are existing MoUs and some of them have been reviewed and amendments have been made. But what are those amendments and what is the rationale behind these amendments being made, and what kind of impact would it make, and how would we as South Africa be benefiting from those particular amendments? Chair, I must indicate that we also want to keep a very close eye in terms of, these MoUs and our participation, so that we can be very cautious in terms of infiltration. We must be cautious and keep a very close oversight to ensure that we do not invite areas in which we are going to find South Africa being compromised, the digital sector being compromised, and the sovereignty of data also being compromised. That is another thing. We must make sure that these MoUs and these agreements that we enter into are in the best interest of South Africa and South African citizens, ultimately. So we must be able to be given what are the scales of economy from these MoUs and these agreements? What are the scales in terms of social impact from these agreements? What impact is it going to make long term in terms of our global and continental presence and participation? How are we then contributing towards global goals and laws that are being made to regulate spaces of the digital technology and ICT space, etc.? Chair, when it comes to ICASA, in terms of the performance evaluation framework, one would want to know that, and I think Honorable Sobrathi also spoke to this, it's constitutional alignment. What is the constitutional alignment, taking into consideration that, it is a Chapter 9 institution? Also, in terms of the powers that are given, is the powers given in terms of the performance evaluation, do they lie within the ministry, the Office of the Minister, the DG? Who does the performance evaluation? If I might have missed that, apologies, colleagues. So that we get a clear sense of independence on the performance evaluation that would take place on commissioners in this regard. Additionally, it is for us to review in terms of what has led to us also getting to the point of putting this in place. What were the deficiencies and systematic challenges that were identified that required for us to put this performance evaluation framework in place? And what do we seek to achieve with it ultimately going forward? And with this then a document that would then obviously be evolving, or is it a standardized document that is aligned with the Constitution, with the legislation, and will protect the institution's integrity and resources, and ensure that we are able to retain competent and capable commissioners who will then serve in the commission? Chair, I also want to find out in terms of ICASA. Now, ICASA must have the ability also to tell us what are some of the deficiencies that they have identified. Perhaps what has been the consultation process that has been undertaken in developing the performance evaluation framework that is now being introduced. What is the system that will be utilized to gather this information? And additionally, how will the data that is being stored, what is the guarantee of that data being protected, the security risks and cyber security risk, etc.? Are we sure that the systems that are being developed are independent? Data lies within the institution itself. Where does that data lie? This is, once again, Honorable Chair, speaks to the sovereignty of data, because we do understand that as we go through and undertake various platforms or institutions where we roll out mechanisms and dashboards and different mechanisms of making sure that we're able to monitor, evaluate, and deposit information, we must always have at the back of our minds to say, where does the sovereignty lie? Is it going to be compromised? Is there independence in this? And are we then building a system that is localized, where it is not dependent on other external support in terms of ensuring that there's data that is being protected ultimately? Chairperson, let me stop there, and thank you very much for the opportunity. And I must just indicate that in your remark before you gave an opportunity to members of the Portfolio Committee, I must concur and agree with you in terms of the reporting that you have given, in terms of how we have engaged with the department, especially when it comes to the bilateral trade agreements, etc., and the presentations that we have been requesting for them to bring forward to the Portfolio Committee, and we've been quite consistent on that. And I think it would only be appropriate that you had corrected that notion in this sitting. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chauke Adonis. And then our last speaker is Honorable Mkhaga.
Thanks, Chairperson, honored members, the Minister, and everybody in the platform. Chair, pardon me, my screen is not well here. So please accept my hidden picture. Chair, the first comment from my side would be in relation to the processes of remuneration as presented by Mr. Shadembe. Just to understand the process for remuneration and the role of the minister in between before submission to the National Assembly. I just want to understand that. Two, the dispute mechanism, does it comply with the general dispute framework recognized by the Labour Relations Act and the processes of CCMA? Well, we're basing our dispute formulation on those pieces of legislation that are critical in the resolution of dispute. You touched this question of delay by Parliament. My question was going to be how, because I understand the background you just outlined to this meeting. Why mechanisms of councillors seem to be much tougher and stricter than those of the management of departments or entities? It's a question of fairness here. Because as I'm listening and reading the presentation, you could feel that the tightening of the processes, for me, seem to be more stricter and tougher than those of the management. And I thought the vice versa is the correct one. The MOUs, honorable member has touched on the question of the funding of the models. The SAPO status. Given the status of SAPO in our country, the challenges confronted by SAPO, how is our input taken serious by our partners? Because you know that it's nationally known that SAPO is not in good health. And I know the efforts that we are putting, but this is a global stage. How do we share with confidence and in relation to policy formulation guiding SAPO or post offices internationally? How are we received as a country as far as this matter is concerned? The last one, Chair. Given the current geopolitical environment, what has been the breakthroughs and deliverables who are making an impact in society? It was not doing this for fun. At the end, citizens must benefit out of the whole process of these international agreements and MoUs. What has been the breakthroughs and deliverables and the impact we are making in society in terms of your own assessment and evaluation? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Khaga, all honorable members for your engagements. Just one or two questions on my side. On the performance management system as well as the evaluation panel, I think I've already asked the question on when the panel is going to be finalized, when are you advertising, etc. If we could just get a response on that. And then how does this performance management system take into account that the projects that ICASA runs, right, whether it's market inquiries or anything of that nature, are normally over a multi-year cycle? So at which point do you evaluate, given the fact that they're unlikely to finish it within a particular financial year? But I think linked to that, is there an intention to include in the PMS, some impact, some assessment of regulatory impact? So just, I mean, we don't have to go into the entire substance of what the PMS says, although it has to be in consultation with the NA, as I understand it. But are you looking at the regulatory impact of the work that the councillors do, and how are you intending to measure that? It may need a discussion separately, but if you could just touch on that. Then what then happens to the evaluation for financial year end 2025-2026? Because we've now completed that year, there's still no panel in place. So what is the minister's thinking in terms of what is supposed to happen there? And then when can we expect then 2026-2027 to be signed? Finally, have you engaged with the DPME at all in terms of this framework for monitoring and evaluation? As I understand, a lot of things of the DPME are templated. So what is going to be the approach there? And then on the international agreements, I think the minister will appreciate that we're harping on this issue. Firstly, because this parliament appropriates to yourselves a lot of money for international travel. And I think as the members have already said, we want to see what the impact of that is on the ground. I think it's a serious indictment on all of us, and it's a huge disservice to the many young people who could benefit from digital skills, international best practice that we could learn from. I mean, SingPost, which you haven't moved on that agreement, SingPost is, heralded the world over as being one of the best post offices, especially in terms of how they turned around their post office. So if you could just give me an indication. I understand from your report, you are now reporting annually to the president. In fact, I understand that the presidency has gone so far as to say, if reports of the content, the substance of the trip, what you have learned there, what you're bringing back, what you're going to implement are not presented to them before 7 days or whatever, within 7 days of the trip, then the next trips won't be approved. So I just want to check, are you submitting those reports? And then what did you then say to the president in the annual report where you're supposed to speak about international agreements? Because from this report, it doesn't seem like anything has been presented. So I won't go on to the Ivory Coast matter. I think Honorable Chawuke, Adonis, and the inputs of other members have covered me. Honorable Minister, may I hand over to you to then lead the department in the responses?
Thanks very much, Chair. I think let's start with the responses on particularly the majority of the technical questions by the DG and the DDG, and then I'll respond to the very pointed questions which were also directed for me. So let's follow that sequence and then I'll come in at the end. DG, over to you.
Thank you very much, Minister, and thank you to the members on the questions being asked. Hope I'm audible. I'm not seeing the screen.
We can hear you, DG.
Thank you very much. Then I'm going to, there are a couple of questions I think related as I asked the DDG. Honorable members, maybe on the ICASA performance management system. Obviously, as you know, this dates back quite some years. We started the process around 2021 in as far as trying to get to this, and you can see that it's still not yet concluded in this regard. Suffice to say that our assessment with regards to what would be assessed, which was the question asked, it aligns to the performance agreement. We've had extensive engagements, fortunately, with the councillors to agree in terms of the scope of the performance agreement. They've actually signed, well, there is a draft that has been submitted, and I think all of them in terms of the approval, obviously, because a performance agreement has to be a negotiated contract between obviously the employer and the employee. In this instance would have been between the councillor and the minister, and also with the councillors with the chairpersons. So we've gone in terms of greater details of assessing. We've also taken note of the areas where it does overlap, and similarly to the assessments that we do in the department, DPME does, as well as also from their perspective, it will be judged in terms of what they've contracted in the ICASA APP, and that fundamentally is that. We've also had the discussions where we have it was clearly outlined to us that in some instances the councillors sit, and I thought maybe the chair would have come in on this. You'd find that this particular program, maybe if you talk about the issues related to the quality of service, it would be more than one councillor dealing with that particular matter. So you would therefore find it finding its expression in a number of councillors, and where obviously collectively as council they do obviously adjudicate or sit over matters. Again, that will also then be apportioned to all the councillors in that assessment. So that is how it has been framed. They are, as I indicated, those particular drafts, and I think the DDG can further allude in terms of that, if perhaps then the portfolio committee would like to also have sight of those. I think that can also be made available. With regards to the MoUs, honourable members, there was a 2015 court ruling, and that particular constitutional court ruling ruled that international agreements can only enter into force after tabling in Parliament. And this was a matter of Earthlife Africa and another one, which is Western Cape, High Court case. I think the case number, we can make it available, but this was in 2015. And that basically stated that the national executive powers that were there in terms of Section 231, subsection 3, obviously that these agreements were technical in nature. But the court felt that because they bind the Republic, it was only proper that these MOUs must be tabled in Parliament. And so that has been our efforts in as far as, and you would have seen that in 2019, when we tabled quite substantive number of MOUs, obviously those were tabled and the ATC was then issued. The question that was asked just in general, and I think we can talk to broader, as to what is then the impact and why do we do this? Our sector is borderless by nature. So there's a level where you would want to do the collaboration with our neighboring countries on issues related to spectrum management, spectrum spillages, so that you're not going to have that particular issue. In some instances, for example, where we would have broadcasting signals crossing over, you would find that it does hinder on their national broadcasters in as far as revenue. So we had to make sure that that is being managed. The issues with regards to the analog switch off, as you would know, honorable members, where we also needed some of our neighboring countries were in advance in as far as the switch off, and therefore we had to make sure that we do proper coordination of that. With regards to the postal services, and I appreciate greatly the interest with regards to this, because the postal network, the SAPO, let me rather say, is actually a very critical player. We've been saying this in as far as it being a partner for government, for citizen delivery of services, ensuring that there's communities connected. In our instances, honorable members, one of the key programs as part of then the socioeconomic has been that SAPO serves obviously as a chain in as far as financial distribution of funds cross borders. So they would have a remittance system where any of the, for some Southern African countries, would be able to send the money through the postal channel, through obviously to their relatives. And so that has been, by and large, why we would have this. In the instance, for example, within Cuba, SAPO was also serving as that particular great footprint in as far as then being able to send, therefore, the remittance system linked to then the Cuban in the midst of obviously the challenges that the country was facing in that regard. I also want to highlight the fact that these MOUs, as you would know, they were entered into force at the time where the post office was in a far healthier situation than it is today. So the intention and the expression in as far as entering into cooperation agreement, as been highlighted here with Singapore, was purely to then take forward and learn, apart from learning in as far as the technological advancement that the Singapore has, how they efficiently run the network, but we were also using it as an opportunity in as far as the logistical transportation as well as the e-commerce hub for both for the Southern African, not just South Africa, but the Southern African market, and linking into the South Asian market as well. So those have been some of the intent and the interest that we still do have there. The question that will be asked is that, are these MOUs therefore still relevant and viable today? Most certainly. In the recent trip, and I think the Honorable Chair was asking about that the DM has just taken to Singapore, there has still been great interest from Singapore to assist us in as far as then the reconstruction of the post office. And similarly, there's been obviously interest in as far as areas of skills as well as SME innovation. The department does assist the principals in as far as making sure those international reports are submitted timelessly within those, because obviously the principals are accompanied by officials of the department in those international trips. The issues that I think they were talked about in terms of then the capacity constraints, I must indicate again that in the previous structure of the department, obviously we had a far bigger complement within our bilateral unit in the international, what was the international branch then, and now we are sitting with a slightly less complement. However, just to indicate, and this is what I've also been expressing to the team as well, to then say the work of international is the monitoring and keeping, therefore, the repository of the information and coordinating this with the relevant entities, both internally in the department, as I said, through our sister departments, as well as SOCs and the private sector and the SMMEs. And it's just then the question of making sure that we have those regular, whether it will be quarterly or annual meetings, at which point we convene all the relevant stakeholders to monitor the progress. And obviously this is expressed in each MoU in as far as the establishment of those particular steering committees as well as working groups. Chair, I'm hoping that I've by and large answered some of these particular questions. I'd like to hand over to DDG as well as Mr. Zweli Masilela to perhaps then respond on some of the other questions asked. I will come back later if perhaps there's been some that we have missed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DG, and thank you, Chairperson and honorable members, for the questions. I'm going to start from the back and just move upwards with the questions raised. Maybe starting with what the Chairperson ended off with. The Chairperson was asking, when will the panel be finalized? Chairperson, we are sitting in a catch-22 situation here, in the sense that we cannot finalize an expanded panel of more than 3 members to include the technical expertise until the PMS has been approved by the National Assembly. This is because the PMS as it stands prescribes the 3 members of the panel, and the technical expertise is not one of the skills that are included therein, which is why then we're trying to get the 2 of them simultaneously into the National Assembly, for the approval of both the revised PMS together with the panel that should go with it. So we will not do that separately from the PMS review itself. On the question of multi-year projects and how do we take that into account, these are already dealt with when ICASA prepares its APP. The APP becomes one of the input documents into the contracting or the establishment of performance agreements. So the APP will then say, if a project is multi-year, will say in year 1, maybe 30% of the project would have been covered, or set milestones that will need to be covered in that first year. It is that metric then that will be taken into account in assessing the performance of the councillor in year 1, and same thing for year 2 up to year 3 if the project is a 3-year project. So that is how the performance agreements are structured, using the APP, which already signals when these projects will be finalized. We have not, Chair, provided for the regulatory impact assessment of the work of councillors in the PMS, and as you correctly identify, this is perhaps a larger piece of work that we need to consider and contemplate how best we can include into the PMS. With respect to the 25-26 financial year, Chairperson, the PMS, even as it stands, acknowledges that the year will end, but there will be a process of verifying and auditing the work that would have been concluded in the performance agreement. That process is the process of the auditing of the financials and the performance information by the Auditor General, which culminates in the production of the annual report. It is that annual report then that is also again another input in the performance evaluation process, because it is a mirror image of what would have been taken into account in developing the APP of the organization. So the performance assessment should ideally take place after the annual report has been produced, which would be after or from September onwards. And we, in the current PMS, we anticipate it's a process that can last then until November for submission to Parliament. So we will always be a year behind in terms of the evaluation of the performance. Chairperson, we have not consulted or engaged the DPME on the development of the PMS, and we take this as perhaps a good advice for us to engage with them to see how best they can assist in improving the PMS going forward. But to the extent that we are trying to now finalize the PMS and submit to the National Assembly, we will see how far we can go with them, or else we will await the next review cycle of the PMS. Now, Honorable Mkhaga is saying the process for councillors looks like it's tougher than that for departmental management and entities management. Actually, the whole performance agreements of the councillors mimic the performance agreements that we sign in the department and that entities also sign. There is no extraordinary items included in the performance agreement. What is different is that whereas the departmental performance evaluation takes place internally in the department, but now for DDGs, it includes DDGs from other departments for independence and perhaps more scrutiny. So whereas that takes place largely internally in the department, the performance evaluation for ICASA is, as provided in law, going to be done by an independent panel. That is to ensure that there is minimal interference from a ministerial point of view, which then leads me to the question about how do we insulate ICASA from ministerial influence when the process is essentially led by the minister. The process of contracting involves the minister in the sense that the agreement is signed between the minister and council, but there is no ministerial involvement in the evaluation of that performance. It is done by the panel which evaluates that performance, and that the provision in law is that panel submits the evaluation report to the National Assembly. So there is no ministerial interface which might influence the results or the findings of the panel. The issue of the constitutional alignment, of the performance evaluation, given that ICASA is a Chapter 9 institution, we derive the need for the evaluation of the performance of ICASA from the ICASA Act, which recognizes that because it is a constitutional entity, it needs to have a very distinct and insulated way of contracting and evaluating its performance. So in our view, there is a constitutional alignment between what we are doing for ICASA and what the Constitution provides as for ICASA as a constitutional entity. There was the issue about the role of the dispute resolution or the dispute advisory panel, whether that is in line with section 6A of the ICASA Act. I must acknowledge upfront that the ICASA Act, particularly section 6, capital letter A, it does not anticipate or does not provide for the establishment of the dispute advisory panel. It is an innovation that we have come up with, noting that one, the minister cannot be the resolver of the dispute or cannot be the escalation point for the resolution of this dispute. And it has been felt also that Parliament, perhaps, or the Portfolio Committee cannot also be the adjudicator of disputes, and therefore it leaves a void as to how the disputes, if any, were to arise, are going to be resolved. And in our view, then the panel, then that is the dispute advisory panel, deals with that void in the current system. We provide for the panel also to be approved in consultation with the National Assembly, in the same way that the evaluation panel is approved in consultation with the National Assembly, so that it does not appear to be operating outside the oversight of the National Assembly and becomes a ministerial body. I'm looking at my questions here. I think we have covered the issues as raised. If we have still left out some of the issues, we would be very happy to submit them perhaps in writing to the committee chairperson. Thank you very much.
Will ICASA be coming in on any responses, or do we go back to the minister? Colleagues, am I still in the meeting?
Yes, Chair, I can hear you.
Councillor Ramosi, is there anything you would like to add? I will assume not, and then come back to you, Minister.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just two points, one of which has been dealt with by DDG Shilembe, which was a response to the question, and perhaps it was a point of concern that Honorable Sibrathi was raising about potential ministerial involvement in that panel. I thought DDG Shilembe answered it eloquently, so I won't be repeating that. The other aspect is one which you raised, which is on the multi-year cycle measurement. And I think what becomes important, in addition to what DDG Shilembe said, in terms of the audit that is being done, is even in a multi-year cycle, there are specific milestones linked to deliverable on projects. And that audit and measurement will be looking at performance linked to the delivery of those deliverables or non-delivery of those deliverables in order to assess whether that performance has moved as it ought to have been moved. But I think the additional point that I wanted, which is a takeaway from us and the team, particularly with the sentiment that the team expressed around MoUs, and also the speed in which they are finalized. And the team didn't mention one area, which is a process issue that often elongates the finalization of those MoUs, because prior to actually finalization from the department, there is, as is required with any international instruments of cooperation, a process that DECO embarks on in terms of the vetting of the actual memos to then ensure that over and beyond the department or the line department's alignment with that particular department from another country, they are also consistent with the broader national priorities and that. But I think what is of great value from this discussion is the sentiment that I think was expressed by Honorable Nchabeleng around the insurance that we shouldn't just be entering into MoUs for the sake of feeling good about signing all these cooperative governance with countries, but to cascade those into deliverables and measurable deliverables, wherein on an annual basis will be able to measure that. And it goes back also, Chairperson, to your parting shot around what goes into the reporting around the cooperations that we have, and also the commitments emerging out of all these international engagements that the department and all of us are part of, so that our contribution at that level isn't just measured by participation and an involvement, but also a direct elevation of issues that are in the best interest of South Africa, and that it is measurable afterward. And it's something that we are consistently, underscoring in order to make these MoUs of value. And I think it may also be useful, if time permits, if DDG Shilembe can just make an additional input, particularly around the deliverables with regards to MoUs. And Chair, I take your sentiment around the frustration expressed around perhaps the inaccurate summation of the sequence of events around the MoUs, and I would have thought that the team will also express that error, because you are right. I think for as long as we've interacted with the committee, this is one of the areas you've been consistent about the resolution on that, so that the record also at all times correctly reflects the nature of our engagements, and that even that oversight wouldn't have been done to mislead the committee, and that is corrected. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Minister. Honorable members, it's 11:03. I just want to check whether members feel that there are any questions that have not yet been answered, not new questions, please, members, not follow-ups, but anything that particularly struck you that it hasn't been answered. I'll just give you a minute or two just to repeat the question. I'm checking for a show of hands. Okay, silence means consent. However, I do want to make the point, Honorable Nchabeleng. In 1 minute, please, Honorable Nchabeleng.
Yeah, quick one. Chair, I just wanted to, I asked a question about the quick impact in relation to the bilaterals, as to, what level of, in terms of jobs, skills, as well as investment transfer that happens, measurable outcomes. What are we talking about when we're talking about bilaterals in terms of the impact on jobs, the level of investment in terms of what it brings into the country, as well as the skills transfer? Thank you so much. I don't think I got an answer on that one.
Thank you very much. And then Honorable Mkhacha had also asked a direct question that says, which then are the agreements that this parliament is delaying? Because no agreement has been tabled to us in this parliament. I think in her response, the DG said they last tabled something in 2019. So we need to get that out of the way. So can we just be told, as per Honorable Mkhacha's question, which agreements are awaiting ratification from Parliament? and when can we expect them? DG, do you want to come in on those two responses, and then we'll move from this item?
Thank you, Chair. I'm not so sure on the second or the previous question. I might just request assistance with. However, in terms of which agreements we are ratifying, there was a correspondence from the Office of the Minister. I'm just trying to locate it now, of which we had indicated the agreements that we are tabling, and that correspondence was sent through to Parliament March of this year, to both the Speaker as well as the Chairperson of the NCOP. I'll be happy to reshare the correspondences through to your Secretariat of this meeting. Thank you.
Honorable Nchabeleng's question. DG, Honorable Nchabeleng is asking for quick wins. What do we have that can show value for money for the amount of money that is being spent on international work? We understand the geopolitics, the need to engage, the need to ensure collaboration, but you yourselves said in your medium-term development framework that you've got three priorities. First one is reducing poverty and ensuring inclusive economic growth. Second one, capable, ethical, developmental state. And the last one, I think, was tackling the high cost of living. So where are the quick wins that we can speak about on these agreements? We will follow up with the Office of the Speaker to check what has been sent to Parliament, but what value are we getting from this?
Thank you, Chair, and I'm going to also invite Zweli to come through. I did try at a high level to respond, Chair. I think the issues related to measurable outcomes, which is, I think, what Honorable Nchabeleng was asking for, those would have to then be articulated or extracted from the implementation plan in each of the particular areas. Suffice to say, as I said earlier on, Chair, that these agreements, obviously what we are seeking is, for example, market forces for our entities in terms of outcomes of which we have seen some successes in terms of West Africa, in terms of our local enterprises entering into space following, as I said, our engagement and the facilitation of specifically the RSA Cote d'Ivoire MoU. We've also seen the platform expansion for our DigiTech, which is basically therefore again promoting South Africa's innovation in that ecosystem. We're also seeing opportunities in as far as the training programs are and how we are leveraging, especially in the areas of cybersecurity as well as the digital skills. In line also, I think, for example, with Cuba, there has been some collaboration as far as the issues of ICT infrastructure. And obviously we've seen, as I said, in the Cuba, the joint collaboration with regards to in the postal sector, the post stamps, as well as also the issues related to then the remittance, which is the money transfer that we are able to ensure. For example, the South African students who are up in Cuba, where they have been able to use that in the past, Chair. Other areas of the collaboration would be obviously, I think, in the international field that we are collectively championing the Global South agenda in that. But I would like to invite my colleague to, if he wants to further allude, but what we could possibly do, Chair, as well, is to also provide these in greater details, I think, for each specific MOU. My understanding in terms of these MOUs, Chair, I think we were saying it was Uganda, It was the Saudi Arabia at Singapore, its Ivory Coast. I'm hoping that is the complete list that we'll be able to provide to you in each greater details of each one.
Okay, let's move, DG, because we're going to run out of time. Can you, you seem to have the document in front of you. Can you, before the end of the day, so that we close this thing off properly, you provide us with your list of international agreements that you've got in place? You indicate the status of the agreement, because now I'm confused, because you said you can't implement until they're ratified, but now you're talking about implementation of some of them. What we are most interested in is the outcomes that are expected and what has been done to date. So if the agreement speaks about training, how many young people are going to be trained if it's young people? If it's about market access, in which fields, who has gone in, that's the type of information that we're looking for. So if we could have that by the end of the day. But let me thank you very much. Thank the Minister, the councillors from ICASA, everybody who has participated in this discussion. I think you will appreciate why these issues are very, very important to us. It can't be that when we have partners, across the world who are willing to work with us, children, young people in South Africa still don't have opportunity. Our businesses are not expanding as much as we would want. So this is an area of concern. And also we welcome the work that is being done on the PMS, and we hope that it will be finalized very soon. Before we have to call you, you will indicate that it is now done so we can then schedule that. Thank you very much, colleagues. Let's move on to the next item. There was an item here around the consideration and adoption of the MoUs. I think it's quite clear that that is not something this portfolio committee is in a position to do. We were promised annexures. I was asking not so long ago where the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia annexure is. So we will follow up with the Office of the Speaker. And once that is received, then we can consider, the report in order to put it before the National Assembly for ratification. The next item on the agenda, colleagues, I think it is the GCIS and DCDT budget vote reports for the committee to look at. I would like to ask the committee advisors to consider the reports read and to all focus their attention largely on the observations and the recommendations on both reports. You have 20 minutes to present both, because I'd like us to spend quite a bit of time deliberating on the observations and the recommendations. I'm not sure who's leading, Mr. Maleka, Dr. Mutupe?
I may share, I would start that Mr. Maleka would follow almost immediately. Trying to switch on the camera. Hajira, do I have sharing rights?
You can go ahead, Dr. Madupi.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning to the honorable members. Good morning to the Minister, the DG, and the rest of the colleagues. Chair, I'm not too sure. I'm going to be presenting the GCIS report, Chair. It's it's not as detailed or it's not as long as the DCDT. I should be fairly quick. I'm not too sure if my screen is showing, Chair. It's a draft report of the Portfolio Committee on its deliberations on Budget Vote 4 on GCIS. Can I proceed, Chair? Is it showing?
It's showing funny on my side, but I don't know if other members can see it. It's like a little corner thing.
Let me, I'll share again in a minute. I think I know what's the problem. Let me stop sharing.
It's showing fine on all of us, Chairperson.
I'll share just now again. I think I know what's the problem. Sure. It should be showing properly now, Chair.
Yes, it is.
Thank you so much, Chair. Good morning again, Chair, to yourselves and to the honorable members. I'm going to quickly present the report on vote 4, which is the GCIS. Chair, the first part will be the executive summary, which basically, gives sort of a high level on what the report entails. But when we get to the recommendations, which we sort of, we have consolidated, those will touch on the critical issues that the recommendations covers. The Portfolio Committee Chair considered budget vote 4 of GCIS for 2026-27 financial year, including the department's APPs and that of the MDDA. The committee recognizes the central role of GCIS in strengthening democracy, in supporting active citizen participation and ensuring that government communicates coherently, credibly, and inclusively across all the spheres of government. The committee noted during the process that the 26-27 APP demonstrate improved strategic alignment with the NDP, the MTDP 24-29, the GC policy of 2025, and the NCSF 25-2030. Number of priorities that are highlighted in the report, Chair, is the strengthening coordination of government communication. That's one. Expanding digital and multimedia platforms, countering misinformation, supporting the upcoming elections, and improving access for marginalized communities. However, Chair, the committee remains concerned that there's fiscal constraints, leadership instability, particularly the issue around the appointment of the DG, and even provincial implementation limitations in measurement frameworks. Those continue to undermine the full impact of government communications. While digital innovation initiatives such as the editorial command center, omnichannel platforms, and analytics are welcomed, evidence of behavioral change, citizen empowerment, and rural impact remains limited. The capacity, Chair, to counter misinformation and disinformation is also constrained to some degree, particularly outside normal operating hours and during periods of heightened political or social risks. Regarding the entities, which is the MDDA, Chair, the committee acknowledges the importance of the MDDA in strengthening media plurality and supporting community and small commercial media. However, persistent dependence on a narrow funding base, declining grant allocation in real terms, weak sustainability of funded projects, and governance and organizational culture challenges, those raise concerns about the agency's long-term effectiveness and resilience. The committee, therefore, Chair, emphasizes the need for strengthened leadership, clearer impact measurement, improved coordination with other digital state institutions, such as NEMISA, one of amongst many others, diversified funding models, and a decisive shift from activity-based reporting to a demonstrable societal impact. Chair, on the consolidations as indicated in the report itself, the recommendations to the department itself, it would be a number of those, Chair, that have been consolidated, in subsections. The first one is around leadership, governance, and institutional stability. And I need to emphasize as well, Chair, as part of the recommendations, I think as discussed with the committee previously, part of that would have indicated, at least based on a quarterly basis, the timeframes in terms of when is the committee expecting the department and the MDDA to respond to some of these resolutions. On leadership, governance, and institutional stability, the committee recommends that the minister in the presidency urgently finalize the appointment of a permanent DG and many other senior positions in order to stabilize leadership, strengthen accountability, and improve organizational performance. Sustained delays in executive appointment, it has been noted, Chair, it undermines strategic continuity and operational effectiveness. The second set of recommendations is around the impact-driven government communications. The committee recommended that GCIS should strengthen outcome-based planning by standardizing audience reach, and engagement metrics across platforms and clearly distinguishing between impressions, unique users, and meaningful engagement. The committee further recommended as well recommends that expanding evidence that GCIS must expand evidence-based research to demonstrate behavioral change, improve citizen participation, and empowerment, particularly in rural, township, and marginalized communities. The next set of recommendations, Chair, is around the countering misinformation and disinformation. The department, which is GCIS, should strengthen its capability to respond to misinformation and disinformation, including after hours and crisis response capacity, supported by real-time monitoring and analytics. The department must coordinate with other departments and digital platforms, which should be enhanced, that should be enhanced to protect the most democratic processes, social cohesion, and public trust. The next set of recommendations, Chair, is around the digital capability and workforce development. The committee recommended that GCIS, it must expand digital, analytical, and coordination skill development to at least 20% of staff annually, prioritizing capabilities required for digital media, data analytics, content production, and rapid response communication in converged media environment. The next batch of recommendations, Chair, are under GCIS. It's inclusive and coordinated communication. GCIS should ensure that communication impact plans are developed and implemented consistently across national, provincial, and local levels, with specific focus on service delivery priorities, elections, economic opportunities, and social cohesion. Communication products must remain accessible through all official languages, South African Sign Language, Braille, and formats suitable to persons with disabilities. The next batch of recommendations under GCIS, Chair, is media buying and community media support. The committee, as part of its recommendations, urges the urgent finalization and implementation of government media buying policy, ensuring increased predictable and transparent allocation of ad spend to community media, including community broadcasters and qualifying SABC platform. This policy should support the sustainability of grassroots media while enhancing the reach and inclusivity of government communication. The next batch of recommendations, Chair, they are to the MDDA. The first category is governance and organizational renewal. The committee recommends that governance stability and organizational culture at the MDA be strengthened through a structured change management and organizational culture improvement program, including staff satisfaction assessments, enhanced board management relations, and transparent reporting back to Parliament. The next category is underfunding, sustainability, and diversification. The MDDA should urgently develop and table a diversified funding strategy that reduces reliance on the broadcast sector level. This should include partnerships, donor funding, project-based funding, and policy proposals to expand the funding base, including consideration of digital platform contributions within broader legislative reforms. The next batch of recommendations, Chair, it's under transparent and predictable grant management. The agency must improve transparency and predictability of grant allocation by publicly publishing funding criteria, timelines, selection processes, and average grant sizes. This would strengthen credibility, fairness, and accountability in the use of public and donor funds. The next batch of recommendations, Chair, in the report is measuring developmental impact. The committee recommends introducing mandatory post-grant impact assessment to evaluate funded projects against indicators such as audience reach, governance improvement, financial sustainability, digital transition, and revenue generation. Reporting should move beyond grant disbursement numbers to demonstrable community impact. The next batch, which is the last batch of recommendations, Chair, is around digitalization and capacity support. MDDA should expand its digitalization support program for community media with greater geographic reach and stronger post-funding skills development, mentorship, and business support. Collaboration with NEMISA, as indicated earlier on, Chair, and relevant departments should be formalized to strengthen the sustainability and professionalization of community media. In conclusion, the committee reiterates that effective, inclusive, and trusted government communication is foundational to democratic governance, social cohesion, and development. The successful implementation of these recommendations will be critical to ensuring that Budget Vote 4 delivers measurable impact, strengthens citizen participation, supports media diversity, and enhances the resilience of the South African communication and information ecosystem. That's the report and with its recommendations, Chair, on Budget Vote 4. I'm not too sure, Chair, if you want us to move almost immediately to Budget Vote 30. Chairperson?
Yes, please, let's take both of them.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Maleka will then present on Budget Vote 30. Mr. Maleka, thank you, Chair.
Good morning, honorable members and colleagues, honorable minister. If I may please get the sharing rights.
You can go ahead, Mr. Maleka.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen. Hey, just 1 second, just looking for the document. Not sure why it's taking. Okay. Please, if my screen is indeed visible, I would assume it is. It looks visible to me.
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. The APP for the 26-27 financial year report as presented to the committee here, well, this is just a summary of the actual report, but I think it's safe to note that the committee acknowledged the improved quality of planning with a more outcome-oriented APP that was presented to the committee than in previous years. It had a strong underpinning of a policy regulatory agenda focused on digital infrastructure, digital transformation, AI, and online safety and broadcasting reform. However, it's safe to say, Honorable Chair, that the committee expressed concern that the persistent fiscal constraints, weak inter-entity coordination, policy implementation bottlenecks, and institutional instability continue to undermine the translation of policy intent into measurable socio-economic impact, especially in relation to key priorities, which include universal broadband access, skills development, productive use of digital technologies, and a strengthened policy and regulatory environment. Chairperson, across the portfolio, the committee observed systemic challenges, including fragmented state digital infrastructure, delayed appointments to boards and executive positions, a high vacancy rate in critical technical posts, and weak oversight and enforcement mechanisms. And of course, these challenges, Honorable Chair, are compounded by financial distress in several entities, notably the SABC, Centec, SAPO, and Postbank, which necessarily poses a risk to service delivery, the election readiness of the entities, broadcasting sustainability, and broader financial inclusion. While entities such as ICASA, FPB, and .ZNA operate in increasingly complex digital environments, the committee is concerned that the regulatory capacity, funding models, and digital literacy have not kept pace with technological change. Similarly, skills development initiatives, particularly through NEMISA, are not yet scaled or sufficiently integrated across infrastructure regulation, and content ecosystems to demonstrate job creation, SMME development, or rather inclusive digital participation at the required levels. So there's a great emphasis from the committee for urgent need for decisive leadership, stronger shareholder oversight, consolidation of infrastructure planning, integrated skills development, improved coordination across entities, and a shift from activity-based reporting to measurable outcomes. So the recommendations, Chair, and as Dr. Midupi has said before, we almost always try to attach a timeline or a time-based kind of reporting from the department. And as such, it really stems from a long-standing request by honorable members, including the late honorable of the IFP who passed away, who had always consistently said that we need to attach some timelines to the recommendations so that we can then tangibly hold the department accountable. The timelines, Honorable Chair, must add, are objective in nature because it's the advisors that really try to align the timeline. So I would really implore that honorable members, when they review the recommendations and if they think the timelines are impractical, then they are adjusted as such. In terms of the summarized recommendations for the department, Honorable Chair, the first theme was around the strategic coordination and infrastructure consolidation. The committee recommended that the department agent, through the minister, the department agent shift from fragmented planning to an integrated whole of state digital infrastructure approach. This includes developing and tabling a national state fiber consolidation framework and a state digital infrastructure consolidation framework, covering fiber, towers, and data centers with clear roles for all the entities involved. The department must ensure alignment with the presidency on the implementation sequencing of the digital public infrastructure. The second theme was around governance, institutional stability, and capacity. That through the minister, the department should urgently fill all funded critical and technical regulatory and senior management vacancies to stabilize institutional capabilities. Delays in appointing boards and executive must be resolved to restore accountability and service delivery across the portfolio, so that the oversight also of shareholder complex should be strengthened through a standardized portfolio-wide performance monitoring framework with enforceable consequences for underperformance. The third theme, Honorable Chair, is around the fiscal risk management and election readiness, where the committee recommended that the department submit clear budget risk and mitigation plans, particularly highlighting risks to regulatory effectiveness, broadcasting stability, and election readiness. We emphasize the issue around quarterly reporting of some of these because knowingly that the elections around the corner, we would not have the leisure to waste any more time. And that reporting should address risks related to ICASA capacity, SABC sustainability, and Centex dual elimination costs, as well as progress on the digital switchover, and of course the debt resolution between Centec and the SABC. The fourth theme, Honorable Chair, was around the rationalization of state digital infrastructure entities, and it relates to the first theme pretty much, and that is that the department must urgently finalize and table rationalization options of broadband infraco and Centec, supported by transparent cost-benefit analysis with defined decision timelines, and that delays in rationalizations are increasing fiscal risk, infrastructure duplication, and operational inefficiencies. The fifth theme, Honorable Chair, was around digital skills and impact-driven delivery, where the committee calls for the establishment of a portfolio digital skills coordination framework with NEMISA designated as the central implementation entity. All major programs, including SA Connect, AI, policy rollout, online safety, and broadcasting digital, must include mandatory measurable skills development components linked to employment, internships, and enterprise development. Skills initiatives must move beyond participation numbers to demonstrable socioeconomic outcomes. And I think that's a consistent theme across that the members were requesting a more outcomes-based oriented approach to implementation of the APP. Honorable Chair, now we'll move to the various entity recommendations and themed as such, the first one being around the regulatory and oversight of entities, particularly relating to ICASA, FPB, and .ZNA. That the regulatory bodies must transition from process-driven planning to outcome-based regulation with clear indicators showing impact on affordability, competition, safety, and inclusion. ICASA must expedite spectrum licensing, strengthen enforcement, and present a regulatory readiness plan for the upcoming elections. The FPB must accelerate digital and AI-enabled enforcement, particularly in relation to child protection, while strengthening staff well-being. For .ZNA, it must increase registrar compliance, invest more decisively in cybersecurity infrastructure, and integrate domain governance into broader digital inclusion and trust initiatives. The second theme was specific to SABC and Centec around broadcasting and signal distribution. And the committee urged that the urgent finalization of the SABC funding model and broadcasting legislation to restore long-term sustainability of the SABC. The SABC must accelerate monetization of digital platforms and archives while safeguarding its editorial independence. Centec and SABC must resolve through the minister the outstanding debt through a binding settlement roadmap linked to cash flow state stabilization and reduce systemic risks. Clear timelines for analog switch off and cost containment must be published by the minister. The third theme focuses on CETA, BBI, USASA, and the Universal Service Access Fund. That CETA must assert its role as a lead integrator of government digital platforms, enforce interoperability standards, which are governed through the minimum interoperability standards framework that the government adopted some years back, and reduce duplication across departments. USASA and USAF must shift decisively from fragmented funding to delivery-focused programs with strong contract management, integrated partnerships, and visible rural impact. The BBI must resolve licensing constraints, clarify its role within state fiber consolidation, and strengthen its commercial sustainability through demand aggregation. The fourth theme, Honorable Chair, focuses on SAPO and Postbank and looks mainly on financial inclusion and postal inclusion. SAPO must stabilize governance, implement a credible post-business rescue sustainability plan, rationalize its branch and property portfolio, and accelerate digital and logistics modernization. Whereas Postbank must urgently resolve governance gaps, secure capitalization, finalize operational separation from SAPO, and present a clear roadmap toward a full banking license. The impact of financial inclusion must be demonstrated through measurable usage and access indicators, especially in rural and township communities. Lastly, Honorable Chair, is really a focus on skills and human capital development, which was quite an emphasis from the members, particularly relating to NEMISA, and that it must expand the scale and relevance of its programs, align training with labor market demand, and systematically track employment, entrepreneurship, and placement outcomes. There was a strong feeling from the members that the collaboration across the portfolio must be formalized to ensure that skills development is embedded in infrastructure. In fact, let's just say in all the policy developments of the department, including infrastructure rollout, regulation, broadcasting, and of course, any other initiatives that involve digital inclusion. And in conclusion, honorable members, the committee stresses that budget vote 30 will only achieve its intended impact if policy ambition is matched by institutional stability, integrated delivery, measurable outcomes, and disciplined oversight. The recommendations, therefore, aim to ensure that the digital transformation becomes a tangible driver of inclusion, economic growth, democratic resilience, and service delivery for all South Africans. Honorable Chairperson and members, this is the report as presented. I will stop right there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Malega, Dr. Medube, for those reports. Honorable members, what was presented was obviously a thematic summary of the long document that you would have received. In your inputs where you want to make changes, you may refer to the longer document. The difference is that this one focused on the observations and the recommendations in a thematic format. The longer reports obviously include just a review of what we would have received from the department when they presented their APPs. So can I then open for discussions on the budget vote report for both the DCDT and the GCIS? By a show of hands, members. Honorable Bodlani, you will go first.
Thank you so much, Chair. We must really wish you a speedy recovery.
Thank you.
Chair, I think for me, it's really to thank the content advisors and the Secretariat for the work that they have put through for us to end up with these documents. They really do truly capture the essence of the conversations that we've had as a portfolio committee, and we could not have done a better job ourselves in succinctly covering what really the discussions were, especially considering the ideological differences that we have as a portfolio committee. But at the heart of it is all of us wanting to see a South Africa that is progressive. Chair, I'm happy to move for the GCSI report and just make a few comments on the DCDT report. I think for me, Chairperson, we need to, in our mind, maybe make a mental note of how we are going to engage with COGTA, SABC, and all the other related entities, considering that the President has already proclaimed the 4th of November as the local government election year. In our documents, as we are receiving today, we still refer to quarterly reporting from the relevant entities, which then falls away because now we have a solidified date of November 4th for elections. So I'm not sure how we are going to engage with everything that we had planned, considering that now quarterly meetings or engagements are no longer an option. We've also considering that now you have an SABC that essentially is being sent into a tailspin because there's no serious clarity, as far as I know, that in terms of how they are going to be supported. So I think your guidance on that one would be appreciated, Chair. And I am excited, Chair, that we have all these recommendations and we are still going to get SITA coming to the portfolio committee to speak to us on the tracking tool that the portfolio committee is going to be using. It is important for us to not let anything fall through the cracks because the work that we do in this portfolio committee really is interfacing and service delivery to the most, the young people, and indeed the most vulnerable that depend on the conversations that are held in this portfolio committee to improve access to digital infrastructure. In that vein, Chairperson, I think for me, what I would perhaps request is that I don't think we really talk enough about digital public infrastructure. And I'm really passionate about providing digital infrastructure with dignity. So I'm not sure how far we can go as a portfolio committee in terms of requesting research on that, so that at least we are able to be a bit more empowered on that. I do see that it is something that came out of the UN. I just maybe a synopsis of how we as South Africa are doing on that and how we can then question the processes further as members of parliament. So that would be greatly appreciated. And indeed, Chairperson, we do look forward to debating this report in Parliament because it does reflect our work. That said, Chair, I move for the adoption of both the DCDT and GCIS report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Potlani. Honorable Singh.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think both those reports, Chair, do capture our discussions and the concerns raised. Chair, there is just one thing in the GCIS report. Under 8.2 MDDA, the second bullet point, the last sentence, strengthen governance oversight by reporting to Parliament on board and management stability interventions. Chair, I think that's one of the places where I think we need to have a timeline because it was reported to us, and I had raised this at the meeting when we discussed this report, that we were told that communication was sent to the minister in August last year. And I know that you said you would bring it to the committee as well because I had raised the issue with yourself. But I think it's important for us to actually put a timeline there. Chair, and then when it comes to the DCDT report, Chair, I'm all for timelines because that's the easiest way for us to monitor progress and timelessly make recommendations if we are not happy or monitor progress and success on the other hand if we are happy. But I do want to raise certain concerns about some of the timelines that are raised in this particular set of recommendations. Chair, I'll just give you one example. Under 6.5 for the Post Bank, the third bullet point there, it says, we must urgently resolve. The committee recommends that the minister should, and under the third bullet point, it says, urgently resolve the SASSA debt and litigation within 3 months of adoption of this report. So, Chair, whilst I'm all for timelines, I do really want to question the reasonableness of these timelines and whether something is achievable. Because we've heard that this matter is now going to proceed to court. And if the matter is being litigated, I'm not exactly sure how the minister or anyone else can sort this out within a 3-month timeline. So, Chair, I want us to be able to put in timelines and be able to hold whoever is accountable for a particular outcome to those timelines. But I do think then we must make sure that the timelines that we put into these reports are achievable and practical. So that would be my comment, but I would second Honorable Budlani in actually for the adoption of these reports. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Singh. Honorable Nchabeling.
Thank you so much, Chair. And I think, Chair, maybe the point I wanted to raise was the budget report, as we were just talking, there's an element which the budget report does not reflect. One, given the particular reason that we are in an election season, and over the last 2024 elections, we saw a very alarming concern whereby the IEC, and I understand IEC is a Chapter 9 or something or organization, but I would expect the Department of Digital Technologies to be somehow concerned that we've had an IEC that had a systems and technology collapse during a critical election year and during an election. And we are not reflecting this in terms of the current report to say any plans to include some level of monitoring as well as the GCIS role in playing towards ensuring that the elections are going to be free and fair, because it is an extended mandate to GCSI to make sure that elections are conducted in a way that it reflects the democracy that we say we aspire towards, as well as the democracy that we say we have taken an oath to. But there is no reflection in any of that element of the report that shows that we are going to run a free and fair election and that we are going to stand for ensuring that even the broadcasters, radio, television, as well as platforms that are public, are going to actually ensure that there is open, fair access, as well as unrestricted access towards media, as well as communications, as well as broadcasting for the political parties and individuals that will be contesting for elections. So I'm a bit worried about that because we've already had a case whereby elections were taken to court in the last elections over the rigging of elections. And we're not reflecting this serious concerns of a national and international nature in our report. And I would really urge that maybe we need to augment the report in order to include that input, that we cannot go every season of elections with complaints of elections rigging, and yet nothing is done about it. We all evidenced what happened. The system went down for several hours of elections, and after that, there were complaints of rigging and et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted to cite that very critically. The second aspect of it, Chair, is that in our strategic plan, we did alarm that we needed a system to actually align with strategic objectives of department and be able to measure it according to our plan in respect to delivery. You know, there is very little that we will do to say that we could object to the current report, but at the same time, we have just cited an example that we sign things that get not implemented. We are going into another election season of annual budgets. Monies will be released, but that monies will not be appropriated accordingly towards the strategic objectives that were cited. And I will repeat this like a broken record. From the Limpopo province, we have seen how money is wasted by department on programs that don't yield any value, whether it was the post office, whether it was the broadband digital connection for digital transformation, whether it was to do with training, so these problems don't go away, but department keeps on being funded and actually approved the budget that they don't deliver on outcomes. So when are we going to start reflecting the fact that we are serious as an oversight body on these issues of non-deliverables, where department falls short, they don't reduce their budget. Instead, they increase it, and we pass it as parliament. So those are concerns that I just wanted to deposit on the budget report and say that, can we correct those kind of issues? And then reflection of that elections critical input on the report. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Chabeleng. Maybe just let me respond to one or two issues. On the issue of the MDDA that I think Honorable Singh raised, I have requested the Secretariat to prepare a memo for consideration by the Portfolio Committee, which I'm hoping they're going to put in the agenda for the next meeting, to replace Dr. Skeepers. The recommendation we wanted to bring to the Portfolio Committee, which I suspect we may have to first re-establish the subcommittee on the MDDA vacancies for that recommendation to come there, would be that we look at the next qualifying candidate, given that those interviews were held not so long ago, because I remember we had ranked the candidates in order of preference. So that was the one. Then on the issue of Mr. Pakati, I think his name is, again, that memo is meant to be presented to the Portfolio Committee and the minister's reasons for asking that Parliament should remove Mr. Pagat. So I expect the memo to also speak to us on process, should we agree with what the minister is putting forward as reasons, and then on the basis of that we can deliberate it. So I think maybe let me just say formally on the platform that I'm hoping that those matters come to the Portfolio Committee next week, even if we have to juggle around the schedule to do that. Then on the issue of elections funding, I think we had been directed to write to COCTA as well as the National Treasury. I was actually trying to see now if we had received any responses to those letters, and we haven't. Now, Honorable Botlane is right insofar as what do we do given the fact that we have not had a response. I suppose the most logical thing to do would be to invite the National Treasury and COCTA as well as the department to the Portfolio Committee for them to engage us on how they are going to ensure that SABC is capacitated to run the elections project. I do want to warn members up front that we have had several problems when seeking to engage the National Treasury on appropriations, which is why at some point we ended up having to go to the Appropriations Committee. But I think it's something that we should do and with the urgency that it requires. So those points are noted. Honorable Chabeling, on the issue of elections monitoring, I think our report should make should highlight the potential risks they run across ICASA, the SABC in particular. CETA, I'm not sure if CETA is responsible for IEC systems, but it is something that we can check. But perhaps at this point, reflecting on them, as you are saying, is critical to ensure the integrity of the process, and we'll look at how then we're able to follow through on there. And I'm sure the department, when provided an opportunity, will also spell to us what their plans are. Just one or two things from me on the DCDT report. I think it was on page 10. So if we could just check that. I had made my comments on a previous draft, so I don't have many. But I think on page 10, just check. You see this thing of copying and pasting. Dr. Metubi and Mr. Malega will kill you. Under committee observations, you speak about a third and fourth quarter report for financial year 2023-2024. So if you could just update that so we don't have members in the National Assembly laughing at us for copy and paste. Then there was one or two other things that I had seen, which now I cannot find with my highlights on them. I think it's CETA. I think on CETA, you spoke about filling of executive positions. We forget that CETA doesn't have a board. So we need to highlight the need to ensure that a board for CETA is appointed. I wasn't sure of the recommendation, point 6 on page 13, the second one. I wasn't sure around. Okay, I'd also noted the issue that Honorable Singh has about realistic timelines, right? And on that point, it's more retrospective than forward-looking, because by the time we table this report, quarter 3 and 4 have already been considered with their consolidated and catch-up plans. So that may not be a realistic recommendation. Then you say the organizational structure fully costed aligned to the 2025-26 budget. Again, have we not missed the boat here? Because now we're looking at the budget vote for 26-27. So if you could just give some thought to how we manage that. Okay, I've spoken on CETA. That may be my last issue. Colleagues, at some point we're going to have to discuss what we're going to do about this GCIS thing. I'm sure it's at least 3 years now where you keep giving the minister 3 months to appoint a permanent DG at the GCIS. I think that is very problematic, and we may need to say, but also considering whether it's a realistic timeline, because I am told that the process is underway. However, the minister is insisting, or cabinet is insisting, on the finalization of security clearance before appointed. Now, I'm not sure if that's a cabinet decision or if it's law, because I do know in certain instances you'd have a DG appointed pending. Now, to be going to elections without a permanent DG is once again a problem. So I don't think that we highlight that enough. I noticed that on the GCIS in particular, and maybe to a lesser extent on the DCDT, we offer no views on financial management. expenditure management. It could be, so I'm not taking umbrage with that. It could be that we have satisfied ourselves, but in future, I think that we must just reflect what our views are. Colleagues, the reports, both GCIS and DCDT, have been moved for adoption. They've been moved by Honorable Botlani, seconded by Honorable Singh. I think what we are making are just additions. However, that moving and seconding stands. Can I check if there are any objections to the adoption of the two reports, being the GCIS and the DCDT budget votes for adoption? Honorable Chableng, is that a legacy hand?
It's a legacy hand, Chair, sorry.
Thank you very much. So, colleagues, the budget votes reports then are thus adopted. We will meet on Tuesday when we then debate them in the House. Thank you so much for all the hard work that you put into this. I know that it was quite a grueling process, so it is truly appreciated. And let's thank our committee staff for working overtime to ensure that it is finished within the time frame expected. The last item, which will take us to the hour 1300 or even sooner if we're able to move, is the consideration of the report for Q1 and Q2 for DCDT. I did indicate that GCIS was not yet available, so we are only looking at DCDT. Dr. Medupi, Mr. Malega, if you could lead us.
Afternoon again, Chair. I would be leading. Oh, I don't need this one. It's sharing the wrong one. Let me close this. It's just sharing my notes. There's screen 3. Sure. The technology, let me just switch screens. Is it showing the correct document, Chair? Is the 2025-26?
Yes.
Performance. Chair, this is yet again some of the event, or resolutions in this report would have been overtaken by events. Nevertheless, Chair, it is a report on Q1, Q2 of 25-26 for DCDT. The Committee on Communication, it considered the 25-26 first and second quarter performance and expenditure reports of the department and its entities. It acknowledges the strategic importance of the department mandate. The department demonstrated, as part of the observations, at least, Chair, the department, it demonstrated for the 2 quarters persistent underperformance during the first half of the financial year, achieving only 54% of targets in Q1 and 58% in Q2. This reflects systematic weaknesses in performance planning, execution, coordination, and responsiveness to early signs of underperformance. The committee is particularly concerned about the continued misalignment between expenditure, performance, and performance outcomes. By mid-year, more than 60% of the department annual budget had been spent, that we noted as a committee, spent without commensurate achieving the achievement of planned targets, raising serious concern about value for money, underspending on key programs, such as the SA Connect broadband program, alongside overspending on the international relations program, points to weakness in project management, cash flow planning, and cost control. Oversight of portfolio entities remains a critical challenge as well, Chair. Several entities continue to face fiscal distress, governance instability, leadership vacancies, and operational constraints to some degree. While some entities demonstrated improvement during the second quarter, many remain vulnerable, with limited evidence that shareholder intervention and oversight measures have translated into sustainable improvement in performance of service delivery thereof. The committee further noted, Chair, it noted that the department has not sufficiently demonstrated the socio-economic impact of its interventions, including credible reporting on job creation, digital inclusion outcomes, rural connectivity, and long-term developmental returns on public investment. Monitoring and evaluation systems remains weak, limiting the department's ability to course correct and to demonstrate outcomes beyond activities. Those were some of the observations, please, Chair. The committee therefore stresses the urgent need for decisive leadership, realistic performance planning, strengthened oversight, accelerated entity reform, and a sharper focus on outcomes, impact and value for money across the portfolio. The number of recommendations, Chair, first of all, for the department, and then the number of entities under the department. These are consolidated recommendations. For the departments under performance planning and execution, the committee recommends that the department urgently strengthen performance planning, target realism, and implementation discipline. A consolidated turnaround and catch-up plan addressing missed Q1 and Q2 targets should be developed, implemented, and reported to the committee within 3 months of the adoption of this report. And one is hoping that some of those things will be addressed in Q3 or Q4 for that matter. Alignment of structure, budget, and accountability. That was the second batch of recommendations. The department must ensure that its approved organizational structure is fully costed. I think that part might have been done. Date aligned with the 25-26 budget and formally approved with National Treasury. I think that part has been done, Chair. And as I've indicated, some of those things are overtaken by events, really. This is critical to restore accountability, improve performance monitoring, and reduce the risk of continued underspending linked to vacant funded posts. Policy development and delivery coordination, that's the next batch of recommendations. The committee recommends streamlining policy development and consultation processes, reducing fragmentation across programs and entities, and tabling an integrated policy pipeline with clear timelines, responsibility, and implementation ownership. And I think that aspect, Chair, it's really covered a number of, one would not delve much into, some of the policies that are to date are yet to be finalized, but that's what those recommendations really are about. The fourth batch of recommendations linking expenditure to outcomes. The department would need to strengthen the linkage between expenditure and performance outcomes so that spending demonstrably this translates into service delivery, digital inclusion, job creation, and socio-economic impact. Corrective measures should be taken to the committee within the stipulated a number of months. We have noted, Chair, in terms of the realistic of some of these timelines, and one, having noted that, Chair, would definitely make sure that we go back where we need to review some of these timelines, given the practicality of some of, achieving some of these resolutions, would go look into that and make sure that we amend where we need to amend for, realistically coming up with the, timelines that are practical. Number 5, it's the SA Connect program management. Given its material impact on performance, the department should present a comprehensive SA Connect briefing covering governance arrangement, project management capacity, payment processes, funding certainty, risk mitigation, and rollout timelines with particular focus on rural and underserved communities. One need not go into much details with regard to, to the program itself, Chair, with the rolling over of funds at, in certain instances. But that's one area that needs to be really given much attention on. Capacity stabilization and governance. The committee urges the department to urgently fill funded vacancies, particularly at the senior management level, to stabilize leadership and execution capacity. Persistent organizational instability undermine implementation and oversight. One would need also to emphasize again, Chair, that some of this, as indicated, have really been overtaken, by event. There has been some interventions, noted now of recent past with regard to some of these recommendations. Entity reform and portfolio rationalization. The department must accelerate the rationalization and reform of portfolio entities, particularly broadband infrastructure and Centec, as indicated under the APPs as well, through a consolidated time-bound roadmap aligned with legislative and financial sustainability consideration. Under the digital capability of the department, the committee recommends that the department modernize its internal ICT systems. And some of those things I think that would have emanated, from the AG's, report as well, and infrastructure to operate effectively as a digital policy department, supported by improved data, monitoring and reporting system. Recommendations to the entities reporting to the DCDT, financial sustainability and turnaround time. These are some of the entities that have been flagged even under the APPs here. Entities in financial distress, that's your Southport Post Bank, Broadband Infraco, Centec and the SABC must implement credible time-bound turnaround and sustainability plans around their finances. Shareholder intervention should be decisive and coordinated to prevent systematic portfolio risk. Under governance and leadership stability, the committee emphasized the urgent filling of board and executive vacancies across entities to restore accountability, improve decision-making, and enable effective implementation of turnaround strategies. Operational performance and service delivery, a set of recommendations. Entities are required to strengthen delivery execution, ensuring that allocated resources translate into tangible outcomes such as connectivity, broadcasting services, digital skills development, and financial inclusion, particularly in rural and underserved areas. Regulatory enforcement capacity, regulatory entities such as ICASA and the FPB particularly must address capacity constraint, automated systems where possible, and I think that's where ICASA comes in, and FPB for that matter, strengthen consequence management and improve turnaround times, especially in critical areas such as spectrum management and child online protection. Some of those things, Jay, were yet again ventilated and sort of prominently came out during the APP discussions. Oversight of transfer and public funds, ICASA and ISAF must urgently address underspending, streamlining procurement and payment processes, and ensure that accumulated funds are translated into accelerated service delivery rather than idle balances. Under the skills development and impact tracking, the MISA skills-related initiatives must improve beyond reporting training volumes to tracking post-training outcomes, including employment of those students coming out of some of those programs, income generation, and enterprise development to demonstrate real developmental aspect. Inter-entity dependencies and that resolution. This is one prominent area as well, which has really come up over and over again. Entities with material interdependencies, particularly SABC and Centec, as indicated, must conclude enforceable debt settlement and payment frameworks to stabilize cash flow and reduce going concern risks. Reporting, which is the last batch of recommendations of the report, reporting and accountability chair. It's all entities should strengthen quarterly reporting to focus on outcomes, financial sustainability, governance stability, and risk management, enabling the department and parliament to exercise effective oversight thereof. In conclusion, Chair, the committee reiterates that the success of the digital transformation agenda depends not on policy intent alone, but on effective execution, stable institutions, credible oversight, and demonstrable impact. The implementation of these recommendations is essential, Chair, to reduce performance and to restore performance rather, and improve service delivery, and ensure that public investment in ICTs delivers meaningful developmental returns for the citizens of the country. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Medupe. Maybe just to remind members that this report is on the Q1, Q2 financial and non-financial performance for the financial year and financial year 2025-2026. That would have been April to June, if I'm correct, of last year. So as you deliberate on it, please do keep in mind that, we are obviously, as per the reporting period, reviewing that particular set of reports to the committee. Can I take hands? You do have the full document in front of you, which was shared, and the summary that has just been presented. The full document, final draft DCDT 2025-26 Q1 to APP performance report. Colleagues, the report is there for your consideration and adoption. Can I see by a show of hands? Maybe while members are still thinking, Dr. Metupi, and members, please do forgive me. I don't think that I would have been in the meetings where you were considering these particular reports, but I'm just worried, and it's neither in the summary nor in the full document. The view on the MTSF, medium term strategic framework, I think priorities. I remember that at one point we had quite a long discussion in terms of the targets that were put there, particularly for job creation. I think the department had started at 200,000. I see they landed at 20,000, and that is in the financial year 2025-2026. Now, the recommendations of the report don't reflect on whether these numbers can be confirmed. Whether in Q1 and Q2 there was any measurable progress with regards to these 20,000 jobs. Are they quantifiable, and can the department point us to where the jobs have been created? Now, I know when the department was speaking, they spoke to the fact that they're creating an enabling environment. These jobs are going to just happen somewhere. But if now it is part of the medium-term strategic framework, they can't put targets there that they're not able to back up information. So I would wish that there's a recommendation that speaks to those. Similarly, on the MTSF target, which again is carried through to the EEIP, around the carried through to the APP in relation to the EEIP, okay, so these are in the annual performance plans, and they relate to the equity equivalent investment programs. Whether, again, we had looked at what the measurement tool is there and what progress has been made to date, and how we are reflecting it in the report. You had also considered the issue of a zero-rated gov.gov.za portal with plus or minus 70 services. And there was a target of 35% of internet users using online government services. Were we provided, or at least the auditors provided, with evidence of delivery against that target? If not, I think we should speak to that. And then finally, I think the other issues I've resolved, but we can't be silent on the recommendations on two matters. The one is on the license for BBI. Now, it would be in the BBI APP, but then when we speak on the recommendations, we're still not calling for a resolution of that issue. I know we've asked several times, but we still don't understand why the excess license from Centec is not being transferred to BBI. Maybe the content advisors would need to check their records of whether, what seems to be the hold up there. And when you mention the financially distressed entities, you cannot leave out ICASA. We have been told since at least mid last year that ICASA was working on a business case for a new funding model, and we need to reflect that in this process that is yet still to be delivered, even though I believe that it was in the APPs. Honorable Mkhacha, I think you are the only hand that I have. You are recognized, sir. Please do come in. Honorable Mkhacha.
Yes. Doctor,
yes.
Mine was to express a bit disappointment around this question of SABC and Centec recommendations. That seemingly we must resolve time and again as we're having meetings with them. I'm not sure whether it's a question of resistance or a question of lack of political will, Chair. But I think this is worrying, and I think we must explore the course as far as this matter is concerned. Otherwise, I move for your adoption, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Kaka. Honorable Ngobane.
Chairperson, thank you very much as well. We appreciate the report presented. I think, Chair, you've covered me on the first when you were speaking about the clear gap between digital investment and employment creation. So I will jump on that one because you spoke in length on that, Chair.
Sorry, Honorable Nkhaga, please mute in the bus. Honorable Nkhaga, please mute your mic. Apologies, Honorable Ngobane, please do proceed.
Yeah, Chair, I think you've covered me on that link of the economic impact of that investment in IT. Mine as well is to emphasize on what the latest member has spoken about, where the department has failed over years on the clear presentation of the costed BBI Centec rationalization as well, Chair. That is still a challenge, as well as the ICASA, Chair, to be converted to a digital funding. Somewhere, somehow, the department just goes silent on other critical issues that have been outstanding for a long time. So those are the major two issues, Chair, I wanted to highlight: the BBI Centec rationalization, as well as the ICASA conversion to a digital fund, mainly. And to highlight on what Honorable Nchabeling has spoken about in length about the critical matter of the department to focus on the upcoming elections, specifically on the broadcasting systemic risk by the SABC, the unresolved SABC Centec debt persistent that is imposed by that the unresolved debt between these two entities. So those are the major issues that are my concern, Chair, on the national broadcasting and elections related matters. So mainly those are my input, Chair, related to that one. But other than that, on the others have been covered. But I've highlighted, Chair, mainly the reasons on the delay to transitions, ICASA to the digital development funding. That as well, Chair, needs accountability and highlight in this report. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ngobane. Do you second the adoption of the report with those additions?
Definitely, Chair. As an official opposition, we wouldn't like to second, but we would like to be mute. But for now, for now, Chair, without compromising my party, we would like to remain silent on the seconding. But these are the input that we wanted to be highlighted, Chair.
Thank you very much. May I then call for a seconder of the adoption of the report? Then Dr. Medupi, you can just reflect if you would like to reflect on any of the comments that have been made. Honorable Bodlane?
Chair, I so second. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The report is then adopted with those additions, which mainly speak to highlighting some of the gaps that we have identified. Dr. Medupi, do you have any comments that you would like to make?
No, thank you so much, Chair. Not really. We've captured all the inputs from the members and we'll make sure that we make amends as recommended, Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, for the first time in a long time, we have come to the end of our agenda. Honorable Nchabeling doesn't want us to close. Honorable Nchabeling, please do come in.
Honorable Chair, thank you. I see you're worried that they will object.
Listen, I just thank God every day you don't.
Chair, let me congratulate you. The report reflects the true status and the concerns and the issues that we have raised. It speaks very clearly of the problems, the challenges, the issues around non-delivery, the issues around budget adherence. So we're really impressed that at least our voices are echoed now, no longer ignored, and really we want to see the spirit of working together and really incorporating even the hardest of comments into this report as much as possible. So the report does reflect the true status of the situation. And thank you. So don't worry.
No, thank you, Honorable Ntshabeleng.
Therefore, he supports.
Yeah, silently. We must read between the lines. No, thank you, Honorable Ntshabeleng. Let me share those congratulations with the amazing team that we are working with, from the researcher to the secretariat to the advisors. That hard work is truly appreciated. Honorable members, I do want us to end the meeting. We're also losing a number of members who are now traveling to Parliament, but I've taken on board the issues that you have raised, the elections, the related funding issues, the MDDA. Just to also remind you, Mr. Ngoma apologized today because he is also ill-disposed, but I did ask him that we need to set up urgently the subcommittee that is going to be dealing with the 4 vacancies at ICASA, and we need to move very quickly on that process because the contracts are expiring soon. We'll probably also need a small, short-lived subcommittee on MDDA just to resolve those issues there. We're suggesting a subcommittee because it is about filling 1 vacancy and then assessing what to do with the second request for a removal of a board member. So you may see changes on next week's agenda just so that we're able to accommodate that, and we will follow up with the departments that have not yet responded to the issues that you've raised. But let me thank you very much. Sorry, I did give an update yesterday about the study tour. The proposal that I would like to put to you, it's not a formal agenda item, but given also what we were hearing this morning, there's 2 countries that I think if China is falling through, we need to consider. One being the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and then another possibly Brazil. I think the Brazil issue had come up from discussions with the members. I think we've done some work already on Brazil, maybe Saudi Arabia, not so much. I would like to motivate for Saudi Arabia, given the excellent work that they've done on digital public infrastructure that Honorable Bodlani was saying she's also very interested in. But maybe let's come back to members once we are forced to take the decision that China is not going to happen. So we'll come back once we have a clearer direction on that. But we have written to them again this week, to DERCO, via DERCO to the Chinese embassy. With there not being any other issues, members, if anybody wants to comment on what I've said, you're free to do so. Otherwise, then I will call the meeting to a close.
Chair, please note me.
Sorry, Honorable Bodlani, were you saying you'd like to be noted?
Yes, Chair. Sorry, I'm also on the road. Just to raise the issue that, as you would know, there would be moratoriums in terms of our ability to travel. So just to push that the information comes in as soon as possible so that we also make an informed decision. Because for myself, end of May is, and for myself and Honorable Singh, end of May could be a serious problem. So I just to emphasize that the sooner the better, Chair, would appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Honorable Bodlani. We've taken that into account and we'll ensure that we push as much as we can. Okay, honorable members, thank you so very much. May I then declare this meeting officially closed and wish you well for the rest of the day. We will meet on Friday, not too hectic issues. It's really reports on some of the work we're doing. So CETA is supposed to come and present on the automated tracking tool. Also, we wanted to report back on a request that we had gotten from Parliament TV, who want to have a platform that is free to air. So we had engaged SABC on their behalf, but we thought that it is appropriate that we brief the portfolio committee what is being done there, because ultimately it is the work of the portfolio committee as we seek to find a solution to that. There's a third item, but I know it's also not a heavy item on this. So thank you, members. You have a good day further.